Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala ashraf al-anbiya'i wal-mursaleen Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. This is attempt 2 of the second attempt for the discussion tonight, establishing an Islamic village. And I'll just reiterate what was stated earlier, that the Islamic village, the term is actually about establishing not literally a village, but carving out an area for ourselves, yani for the Muslims, where we're independent of the general needs of the society and where we're meeting our own needs. And so because of that, because of that particular function, that functionality, a real communal and community type functionality, then the community now becomes safeguarded from negative influences outside of the community. And I gave the example earlier, similar to the Amish. The Amish have what they consider to be their own little village, where although they're within the society, it's like they have their own society, so to speak, within a society, if that even makes sense. So, as usual, when dealing with this particular subject matter, I have my co-participants, my brother Abu Abdullah Ismail and Abu Abdul Salam Siddiq Al-Jiyani. Both are present now. And so we wanted to get into the discussion concerning the Islamic village. And when we run into technical difficulties, we're basically talking about the importance and or advantages of an Islamic village. And so our brother Siddiq was given us his statements concerning the subject, and we'll go back to him as it relates to the importance and the advantages of an Islamic village. And it looks like we lost him again. So I give that to you, Ismail, with the importance and advantages of an Islamic village.
طيب إن شاء الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيبنا ونبينا المصطفى الأمين وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن استنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين. The response to this discussion, or as it relates to this discussion, we discussed it, alhamdulillah, on this platform. We touched on it a little bit before in the past. When we look at the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ, and aid one another in righteousness and piety. And ulama, they mentioned that al-bir, the way you ta'awun al-bir, aiding one another or mutual cooperation as it relates to establishing al-bir, is that we all work collectively together to establish the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to carry out those things that Allah ta'ala has obligated upon us. And the ta'awun ala taqwa is that we aid one another upon staying away from the things that Allah ta'ala has prohibited. That's how we work together, and our mutual cooperation as it relates to staying away from the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prohibited. That's our ta'awun ala taqwa, our mutual cooperation upon taqwa. So when we look at that ayah, and we look at statements of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that the believer to another believer, kal bunyan, is like a building where one part of the building, one brick, one part of the structure aids and supports the other structure, and all these other narrations that call to Muslims working together and being united, and so on and so forth, then we'll see that in order for us to do that in the most excellent manner, and we've been commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to carry out our actions in the most excellent manner. As the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned in the narration, well known to us in the 40 hadith of Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah, he said, "Inna Allah kataba ihsana ala kulli shay." And indeed, Allah has legislated and prescribed and ordained that we do everything in the most, or with the most excellent manner. That means that anything we get involved in, we do it in the most excellent manner, as the scholars say. This is general, you know. Al-ibad bi umum al-lafz wa laysa bi khusus al-sabab. It's a general statement that deals with everything that the Muslim does. Do it with excellence. Tabarak alladhi biyadihi al-mulk wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir. Alladhi khalaqa al-mawta wal-hayata liyabluwakum ayyukum ahsanu amala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He created us, and part of Him creating us and part of Him establishing this existence for us is so that He would test us to see who from amongst us were the best at carrying out His commandments and obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who's the best at performing righteous deeds. So when we look at all of these statements from Allah and the statements from His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, alladhi ja'a fil wahyayn, in the revelations, the two aspects of revelation that Allah revealed, we find an obligation and an encouragement towards excellence and towards mutual cooperation as it relates to us achieving that excellence. So if we are going to work together and strive together and join one another to do righteousness together and prohibit one another from corruption together, then that has to be done together. We have to live together, we have to be together, and we have to, you know, do this collectively in sync with one another. When we look at the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the way he established his community, okay, when we look at the togetherness, the ulfa, that deep, you know, or that high level of brotherhood that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala established between the Muhajirun and the Ansar, they did that collectively. The Muslims didn't start to move out and branch out and go other places and be all throughout the Arabian Peninsula and throughout Africa. They didn't do that until they first established, right, that essential foundation and bond of togetherness. Once that was in place, then the Muslims were able to move out. And of course, this is you know, a lot more detail when we look at the political development and so on and so forth, the whole entire infrastructure of the Ummah, the Khilafah, and so on and so forth. But aside from that, just their general development as a community, it started collectively. It started when they had, you know, an essential bond and a togetherness, and they were able to be around one another and establish the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and stay away from the prohibitions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala collectively. And if, you know, that's just from a textual standpoint. When we look at common sense, and we just look at the human experience, even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself, and we discussed this also before, He mentioned in the Quran, وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا. Allah made us into shu'ub, and He made us into qaba'il, because the shu'ub and the qaba'il, these nations and these tribes, they typically live together with one another, minus the nationalism and the prejudice or whatever it is that people, you know, shaitan gets involved and tries to cause us to misuse and misappropriate, you know, tribalism and being together as one nation. But the real essence of being part of the same nation and part of the same tribe is that the people can collectively work together through mutual cooperation and attain greatness. You know what I mean? And then once that happens, once you and your tribe and your village and your environment and your nation is great, now you can go ahead and you can reach out, and the ta'aruf and the tafahum can come into play, because now you can meet with other tribes and other nations and build. So for us to have an Islamic village, even if we start small, we go to a particular area, which I'm sure is part of the discussion. I don't want to jump ahead. But if we just have something small, we have a particular area that we're building up, that we're developing, then that will now enable us to go ahead, the larger platform, you know, on the world stage, and have some more mutual cooperation
with our brothers and sisters in other parts of the world, but we have to have our own strong foundation here, specifically in the West, where Muslims can be together, build together, establish the Quran and Sunnah upon the methodology of a Salaf al-Salih together. Our hygiene, our nutrition, our medical care, everything that we need, we can do it collectively. The burden is going to be shared. And we'll find out that we'll see that what the Prophet ﷺ established amongst his companions and the ease that they had because of the collective effort, we'll find that we'll be able to taste some of that, inshallah. That's pretty much all I wanted to contribute as it relates to introduction regarding that topic. I see Sadiq is back, so Fadli ya Habibana.
Hayakallah. Ma'adiratan, been having some technical issues on this end. I apologize for that. Hayakumullah. Jazakumullah khair. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah wa ba'd. Alhamdulillah, may Allah Ta'ala reward the brother tremendously for his introduction. It's vital, I think, that as Muslims we really start changing the manner in which we look at things and we change our perspective on things, and that we start to look into developing vital communities and vibrant and active communities. And I think this is something that is very vital for the survival of Islam, for Islam's sustainability in our generations, Islamic sustainability in our generations to come. I think it's important that we set a strong foundation. And unfortunately, it seems like many of the architects of Muslim communities, they do not set up these communities with this long-term goal in mind. It's almost become an opportunistic type of mentality as far as even the placement of the masajid. We place the masajid pretty much, it seems like, where we could, but it doesn't seem like there's a lot of thought put behind where we place masajid. And I say that to say is that if you look at many of the masajid are in places that the general people don't live. They may be in commercial areas. They may be way out off the highway somewhere, as they are in certain places, but typically not in the middle of the Muslim community, meaning not in the middle of where Muslims live. And that within itself is a problem because, of course, the masjid has to be the centralized place within all of our communities. When we look at the guidance of the Prophet ﷺ, when he moved to Al-Medina, when he made the hijrah to Al-Medina, the first thing the Prophet ﷺ he did, even before constructing his own house, was they start working on the building of the masjid. Because the masjid it serves a vital role within our communities. But when we are so disconnected from the masjid and physically, right? When we are physically disconnected from the masjid because we live 20 minutes in this direction or half an hour in that direction and so on and so forth, we set ourselves up for loss. We set ourselves up to be put into situations where Islam becomes like a weekend thing, or every Jumu'ah, then we go to the masjid. When it's time for the classes on the weekend, then we go to the masjid. But outside of that weekend, during the weekdays, right, week in and week out, during the weekdays, we're not there. We're totally disconnected from it. So it's almost as if we have taken the role as visitors to the masajid, and thus you see that translated in our actions in a manner in which we interact with the masajid. We're visitors. We come there, we do whatever it is that we came there to do, and then we leave, right? And if we're going to have any type of success, then the masjid has to take on a functionality that is greater than just that. And this is something that's very important. So the point is that we have to, one, look to put the masajid in places that are conducive to build around, right? And then two, as Muslims, we have to strive to move close to one another. And again, when it comes to our homes and the placement of where we get our homes, is all seems like it's based on an opportunistic type of a vibe, whereas we get our homes where we can, where the best deal is, where the cheapest rent is, or a rent that's affordable for what we're looking for, right? and so on and so forth. And this can't be our motivation, but rather we should be looking to move in close proximity to the masajid. Now, if the masajid are in places that are undesirable, right? If the masajid are in places that you yourself wouldn't want to live there, then that within itself, I believe, is a problem. And that within itself is something that I believe we need to start changing. We have to get past putting the masajid in the cheapest, area that we can possibly put it. How many masajid we have inside of the worst parts of the ghetto? Now, this is not to say that we just pack up and we move these areas and we leave that area devoid of any type of guidance. No, we're not saying that. But what I'm saying is that these areas should be looked at as areas of dawah, where we have marakiz, where we have a musalla or something of this nature, so that the Muslims who work in that area, then they can pray there. Those Muslims who have to live in that area, okay, then they can pray there as well. But we have to look at them almost as satellites. Whereas the main masjid, right, it should be put in a place where the Muslims live. It should be put in a place where you feel comfortable with your wives and your daughters and your children playing in close proximity to it. So they shouldn't be in bad neighborhoods. They should be in neighborhoods that are good. They shouldn't be in neighborhoods that are crime ridden, but they should be in neighborhoods that have a very low crime rate, so on and so forth. Because if we're going to have any type of success, then we have to strive to start making these real type of communities. And when we look at the model of Muslims who have come before us, who have had some type of Islamic sustainability, generation in and generation out, if we look at one commonality, we will find that they moved and they had areas that were predominantly theirs, not neighborhoods, but they had real communities. And the difference is they just didn't live in close proximity to one another, but they lived in close proximity to one another, and they had businesses that took care of and serviced their needs and the needs of the general community that were in close proximity to where they live. So from a socio-economical perspective, they had a large impact on the economy of their neighborhood or where they lived at. They had a very large impact upon that because they were vital aspects of that economy and key components of that economy. And I think this is something that as Muslims, we have to truly look into as far as pulling our resources together, pulling our talents together, so that we can have a real impact on the place that we live in. And there's so much more to say, but I'm going to leave that there for now because I don't want to get disconnected as far as the topics and which that are covered. But this is just something, to give the listener a general idea of where we're trying to go.
Well, without a doubt, all of that from what was said is very important for the establishing of an Islamic village. When reiterating some of that which was taken, then I think it's very clear and obvious to see that the establishment of an Islamic village is a means to strengthen, one, the love amongst the people that live within that community, because everybody's getting to know one another, everybody's working together for the betterment of themselves and their families as it relates to Islam and that's for so on. And everybody's working together to see the community flourish from that underlying and basic goal, which is to see Islam being triumphant and uppermost, along with each and every individual being strengthened in Iman and thus for so on. So from these particular from these particular points that were mentioned, these are some of the clearest advantages of an Islamic village that really aren't debatable. But unfortunately, I remember when I was in Montgomery, Alabama, when I was at the table, it was during Ramadan, I was at the table with some of the movers and shakers of the community there. And there was a whole neighborhood behind the masjid. And when I say neighborhood, nice homes were in that neighborhood. And I was encouraging with the brothers coming together to strategize to buy the property back there, because there were some business people at the table. There were business people at the table, along with people who were educated that were considered very well off. But unfortunately, some of the brothers at the table had a different opinion. Oh, I don't think we should live next to each other. We don't want people to say, and we don't want people to think, and we don't, that type of sentiment crept into the discussion. And of course, that type of sentiment coming from some of the educated brothers, unfortunately. And it could have been that they just probably didn't want to live in that neighborhood. Allah knows best what their motivations were. But the bottom line is, when you speak in this regard, talking about an Islamic religion like this, you do have some reluctance from some people. Now, I remember when I was talking to one of the brothers, he made a mention. I can't recall which brother it was, but he made mention that some Muslims may fear living around other Muslims because of things that they do that they know is displeasing to Allah outside of the eyesight of other Muslims. And so, they purposely would want to stay away from something like this. But the point is, this is exactly why one of the advantages of doing something like this is that the closer we are together, the further the shaitan is. Like in the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, he clearly stated, وَالشَّيْطَانُ مَعَ وَمِنَ الْإِثْنَيْنِ أَبْعَدُ. That shaitan, he's with the one, but he's distant from two. He's with the Muslim that's by himself, but he's more distant and farther away from two Muslims that are together, encouraging one another with that which Allah Ta'ala loves and is pleased with, striving, competing, to obtain Allah Ta'ala's pleasure. So without a doubt, these are some of the overt benefits of an Islamic village, among other things. Because when we start going into the economic benefits, we start going into, the economic benefits is a discussion that could be set, that we could probably have, that we could probably be doing, or have several conversations over and over again concerning. But when we, I see a comment that looks like it's spam. I'm about to remove that. So at any rate, so those are just some of the things when looking at this, when we're considering this particular topic, and Allah Ta'ala knows best. But we could have a discussion on the economic benefits of something to this effect, probably for days. Because that's one thing that we have to discuss too, as it relates to creating our own economy, and the establishing financial empowerment, being financially empowered, and that's what's on. That's clearly another advantage of an Islamic village, among other things. Then if we go to the aspect of our children, and then education is overlapping. But when we're dealing with our children, the education component will be very important as it relates to our children, because we can actually create an environment where, one, They're not fearing gunshots. They're not fearing, you know, the filth that the streets have to offer in bigger cities like the Philadelphias and the New Yorks and the LAs. They're just not seeing that type of stuff. I remember when I was growing up in LA, we walked down the street, we would see crack addicts. I remember as a female crack addict, she was so strung out one day, she was flashing us. We were children in junior high hopping off the bus. You know, we don't want our children exposed to that type of stuff. And that's the benefit of an Islamic village and separating ourselves within, you know, this society, and thus forth and so on. You know, so the advantages are many and multifaceted, and Allah Ta'ala knows best. I don't know if any of the brothers had any more input as it relates to this particular aspect of the Islamic village before we move on. But if so, I'll let the brothers get their time in, inshallah. No? Ismail, تفضل.
One of the things I want to mention is that you know, there's some historians, you know, for those who don't really see the need of it, or those who may be asking themselves, you know, why these guys always talking about establishing communities, and you know, they keep stressing this, right? We've been doing things the way we've been doing things, and you know, some people think if it ain't broke, don't try to fix it. You know what I mean? The reality of it is that it's very broke. Is tore up, as a matter of fact. If you know, there's some historians that mention that never have the Muslims lived in a Kafir society and have integrated with that society, except that within 100 years, their offspring have become kuffar. And, you know, they cite what went on in Spain for those Muslims who remained in Spain after the Inquisition and things of this nature, and so on and so forth. That by itself is enough to scare us into action. That by itself is enough to scare us into saying, you know what, then we need to, if there's gonna be a Muslim community here in the West, in America, then we need to do what other communities have done historically, where they were able to maintain their religion. And again, when we look at that, we find an example in India, and we find an example in China. Now, when looking at the Chinese example, we also see the downfall, right? And that downfall came when they assimilated. As it is written in a very, very nice article that our brothers, they have on their blog, Markaz Tawheed wal Athar, may Allah Ta'ala reward them. There's an article that outlines the history of the Muslims in China, right? And there's a portion of it, I want to read it to you, so that we can really get an idea of what will bring success and then what will bring our downfall. It mentions in this section, it says that by the beginning of the Ming Dynasty, Islam had been in China for 7 centuries. 7 centuries. The Muslims had been there, and they had maintained their identity. They have maintained their language. They have maintained their deen. Right? I'm hearing some echo. I don't know if that's one. They were able to maintain 7 centuries, right? 7 centuries. It goes on to say a considerable number of Muslims who had settled in China, and they had settled in China from various places. They had laid the foundation for their Islam, to secure their Islam in that particular area. It says, but during those 700 years, in spite of the overwhelming assimilation of foreign settlers into the Han Chinese mainstream, some of the Arabs, Turks, Iranians, and Afghani Muslims had retained their alien status in their special class. Okay, so not all of the Muslims were seen or were even citizens of the dynasty, but they maintained their special class, where they preserved their language, they preserved their customs, they preserved their mannerisms, and they had yet to fully integrate into the Han people. However, under the Ming Dynasty, they slowly started to lose their status, their alien status, and they became Chinese citizens. And at that time, then their manner of living was gradually synchronized. They started to change. They started to melt away into that melting pot. So when we look at this now, and then we can see, the footprint of Muslims who are still in China today, and for everybody, every Muslim, they should feel pain, and they should be very sad and outraged about what is going on with the Muslims in China right now. The conditions, the horrible conditions that the Chinese government have them in, and what they are doing to our Muslim brothers, putting them in concentration camps and so on and so forth, trying to brainwash them to leave their deen, and to the end of it. All of us should be outraged about this. All of us should be standing up at night and throwing the night arrows at those that are responsible for such an atrocity. However, the point is that for centuries, the Muslims, they had a thriving community in China, right? And when we look at some of what made them extremely successful, then we find a lot of examples and we find a model that we could imitate. And likewise, when we look at what led to their downfall, then we see the pitfall, we see the potholes, and we see the pitfalls of what we need to stay away from. We see those things that we need to avoid so that what happened to them won't happen to us. So when we look at what made them strong, is that they had laid a strong foundation for their community. A strong foundation. They lived in close proximity to one another. They had communities where they controlled the economy of their community. They were, of course, they were tradesmen, right? They were merchants, but you also had Muslims. They were doctors. They were military people, right? They had very prestigious roles in that society, and they did not, although they lived in their own separate areas, they did not isolate themselves from the society, but they interacted with the society, right? And I think this is something that we all need to have in mind. We're going to live in America. You have to interact with the society. And they had a strong push for dawah. There were many of the Chinese that accepted Islam from the Muslims who had moved there. So they had a strong emphasis on dawah. They had a strong emphasis on maintaining their deen, maintaining their culture, maintaining their language, so on and so forth. They had a very strong emphasis on these things. Now, when we look at the communities here in America, we are falling short in a lot of these regards. We're falling short when it comes to living and having communities. I can't think of one place in America, well, let me take that back. There are some examples, but I can't think overwhelmingly that where the Muslims are most populated in America, places like New York, places like New Jersey, places like Philadelphia, so on and so forth, that there's any portion of any one of those towns, of any one of those cities that could be said, this is the Muslim quarter right here. This is the Muslim area right here, right? They have, we're in, small concentrations here and there, but we're scattered. But as far as how we have a Chinatown, right? How we have a little Italy, how we have like a little Haiti, and so on and so forth. Is there anywhere in these major metropolitan areas that we have a little Medina or the like, somewhere that is clearly Muslim, that you go into this neighborhood and the vast majority of the people in this area are Muslim? Now, when I say vast majority, I don't mean 100%, but show me a place where it's 65% Muslim. Show me a neighborhood that's 75% Muslim, 80% Muslim, so on and so forth. Now, we don't, Allah musta'an, but these things are vital, because in that, then you will find our strength. When we come together like this, you will find our strength. And I'm going to give you a very simple example of what I mean by that. Now, I mean, we know this is our way. Now, Allah Ta'ala commands us with this. وَلَا تَنَازَعُوا فَتَفْشَلُوا وَتَذْهَبَ رِيحُكُمْ. Don't divide, don't separate, don't be disunified. Why? Because your strength will depart, right? And your courage, it will leave. Your strength and your courage will leave, right? You'll be in a weakened state. Okay, let me give you an example. And this is not encouraging or advocating or suggesting that we put our children in the public school system. I'm not advocating that at all, right? So I don't want people to misunderstand the example into thinking that this is, I'm advocating, for Muslims to go to public school. No, I'm not. Let me give you an example though, because Muslims are going to put their kids in public schools anyway, even though they're not, I don't advise them doing that. But let me give you an example. If you had an area where the vast majority of the children that went to that school were Muslim, let's say not even the vast majority, a good portion, 45% of the students were Muslim in that school, do you know how easy it will be and the leverage that you will have to go there and affect policy? Meaning, so that there's some kind of Jumu'ah established either in the school or the children are allowed to leave for Jumu'ah and they don't have to worry about it. A place where the Muslims could affect policy as related to that particular school. It's possible if the Muslims were in a good enough concentration within that area, because now the politicians of that area and so on and so forth, they will cater to the Muslims and try to meet their needs. Why? Because they want votes and they thinking that they're going to get voted for and so on and so forth. But the point is that it will be enough of a concentration that will turn heads and people will take notice. And when that happens, then you have more leverage to say, this is what we want for our children. This is what we don't want for our children, so on and so forth. But without that, when you're the only Muslim kid in school, how hard is it now to come and say he needs to leave on a half a day on every Friday? How hard is it now to come and say these particular things we're going to go for, we're not going to go for? How hard is it to come and say, look, these are the times we have Eid. The Eid, it needs to be an excused absence because we're not going to be here, so on and so forth. Now, how difficult that become if you're the only Muslim in your neighborhood? But unfortunately, the Muslims have fallen victim to the to the plights of other minority groups that have come before them. And some of them, it's like they take pride in being the only one, and the pride should not be taken in the likes of things like that. Anyway, the point is that if we come together and we live in close proximity to one another, we will have strength. And when we live separately and so on and so forth, it's gonna result in our weakness and a worsening of our situation.
No, I want to add something. And Barakallahu Feek, something you said really sparked a thought. And that is that, what the Muslims have become content with. Okay. One of the reasons, and we see this, because there are, and they're not many. It seems like they're less now than they used to be, but you do have some areas where Muslims live, right? We do have a few areas where Muslim lives, but there's two things that I realized. Number one, the majority of those areas that I know where Muslims, where a lot of Muslims just living outside of places like Philadelphia, and then again, we're dealing with, certain things in the city that we don't want our children to be exposed to, it, to have to deal with living in the city, murders, just the street life, which is something that pretty much comes along with living in those environments. And even if it doesn't make a difference how incredible of a father or mother you are, if your children are in an environment and you don't have a level of independence from the system, from the educational system, how children go, just the recreational system and the outlets that the children have to recreate themselves. If you're not independent of what the non-Muslims are doing and the misguidance that they're sadly affected by and afflicted with, then your children are going to get, they're going to be muta'athirun.
things they're going to be affected, they're going to be influenced, right? We have brothers who have put their children in maybe private schools, Muslim schools, or whatever the case is, but then turn around in the same instance and put the child in, let's say, basketball or football, and the influences are just as bad, and the results are just as catastrophic, because there has to be a level of independence, from all of these things, right? So we have a few places where the Muslims are, maybe they have a masjid, or Islam has a history, Newark, Philadelphia, places like that, where, Islam has a long history there, from the days before, the days of the nation, to when people actually came to Islam, all the way up till today, the Sunnah. And there are a lot of Muslims that have populated that area. But again, the level of independence on every level and every aspect, and on those vital areas, is not there, right? And then we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it easy for those brothers and those communities. But my point is that we do have places where Muslims maybe populate, in large numbers in that area. There are places in Brooklyn where there are a lot of Muslims that live in a particular area.
But the only thing I would say about that,
hold on, let me finish. Just let me finish for a second. Let me make my point, inshallah. There are places where Muslims live. They have populated in a lot of areas, like in Brooklyn, Queens, or this area. But what are they coming together upon? Firstly, they're coming together upon, in a lot of cases, and I don't want to say nationalism, but they're coming together based off their ethnic affiliation with one another, right? Their cultural affiliation. So you have a lot of people from the same demographic moving in a particular area, and establishing the Quran and Sunnah and independent Islamic infrastructure. That's not really something that seems to be on the table, because they'll go to a place like that and they don't always have a masjid that's strong, that's the center of the community. If there's a masjid already there, then they'll participate or go to the masjid and pray. But building the community, right? Building the community and neutralizing the community around the masjid, right? And developing the community around the masjid, that doesn't really seem to be something that a lot of the immigrant Muslims focus on. Not all, but a lot of them, that's not their focus. They move into a lot of areas, that they have people of the same ethnic background, and people that have the same kind of cultural affiliation as they do, or cultural orientation that they do. And that's pretty much as far as it goes. And there's a number of reasons. Number one, a lot of them are ignorant to just how bad things are. And number two, a lot of them, they're pretty much dead set on assimilation. Okay, now all of them may not want to assimilate to the zina and the drugs and the alcohol and stuff that's going on here in the West, but the financial advantage that the Western Hemisphere has over the rest of the world, they want that. And it seems like they affiliate that or connect that to assimilation. So they come in, they throw their kids into the public school. Building Islamic schools in most cases doesn't really seem to be a priority, because there are people in just New York alone, Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, that are multi-millionaires. 250,000 is nothing to get 1,000 brothers to put up $250,000 in New York any day of the week. That's nothing. But that's not their priority. They're not thinking about, Islamic development, schools, so on and so forth. That's not a priority. They don't, sadly, some of them are not even religious or understand religion. They may, in general, care about their religion, but they don't know enough about Islam, enough about the Quran and Sunnah. These concepts, if you really talk about like a pure, pristine idea, let me put your brothers on hold 1 second. I gotta adjust something on my phone. Give me 1 second.
No.
Once I got a statement I want to make. I'm gonna let the brother finish making his statement. Then we have a person that has a comment or statement, our brother Khalil. Then I'll let him speak after I make my statement, and then we'll move on to the next segment, because I think it's something that the brother Ismail is touching on that's very important.
It is. It is.
It looks like he muted. It looks like he muted himself.
Yeah. Too, I want to mention just so that it's not
I'm back. I had
misunderstood.
Okay.
No. I just really fast. I just want to mention so that it's not misunderstood that I recognize places like Hamtramck and places like Dearborn, Michigan, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, but those places aren't. if we're talking about Islamic village, those places don't match up. We're not talking about
Exactly.
we're not
And
talking
Yeah,
that's the point I
about
want
we're
to
not
make. I
talking
don't
about an
want
area where
people.
a
but
lot
that's
of Muslims live.
that's what we're
Right.
doing. That's
Yeah,
what we're
we're not
saying.
talking about that. We're not talking
Right,
about
Exactly.
because
that. And I'm
because
seeing those. I'm seeing
they
those
have a different
comments.
goal.
Yeah, I'm seeing those comments
Yeah.
too. And I think when to bring up those places, then what's understood as an Islamic village, the mark is being missed.
Right. Now
The mark is
Right.
being
if I
missed.
could finish
No,
what I
no, no.
started
Go
to
ahead. No,
say, I
Ismail.
think
No, Ismail.
yeah,
Inshallah ta'ala. No, the further. But I just want to put that out there for the people so that they know
yeah,
that this is not what we're talking about. And if they want to know
right,
why, they got to stay to the end. Inshallah ta'ala, they're going to hear.
Yeah, because we're
right,
gonna get
exactly.
into it.
Hey, nah,
Right,
permission.
right.
Yeah.
Barakallahu fiik. Yes. So when you look at those places, and you know, we take into consideration the fact that there are a lot of Muslims who move into areas, right, and they all live there, and they may even have some stores and some businesses or certain things going on. Our concept when we talk about an Islamic village, and we just have to be real. It's not the only people that are going to be able to establish something like that and for it to function properly are the Salafiyun. That's just the reality. There's no way. I don't care. It doesn't make a difference what people want to, romanticize or think. If Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah are not the people who are leading the organization, leading a movement like that, funding it, overseeing it, setting up the infrastructure, right? It's not going to happen because everybody else is going to get sidetracked by some nonsense because these other manahij and da'awat and afkar are all tainted with some nonsense because there's gonna
Mhm.
when you have something like that, when you have some brothers, a group of people trying to establish something, shaitan is gonna get involved. So there's gonna be he's gonna try to produce some tanazur, some tahrish, some tafarruq, something, right? It's gonna be some ikhtilafat. Ahl Sunnah are trained, inshallah, Ahl Sunnah are trained to bring all their affairs back to the Quran and back to the Sunnah. Now we got another aspect. Now we have to look at the brothers that are, يدعون بالسلفية وبالسنة and look at, their personalities and if they have any weird issues or things going on that may cause separation. So even before we get to that, and I hate to jump to the end and try to offer a solution without discussing all the problems. Because I think it's important for us to understand some of the obstacles that are in our way. You know what I mean? Before we can actually come up with practical solutions and a practical strategy, we got to look at some of our obstacles and things that are in our way. One of them, again, there are Muslims who may feel like they have a level of community already because they live somewhere around people who have similar cultural affiliations and dispositions as they do. And that's not the case because if you look at their communities, their children aren't winning. They're getting influenced by all of the negative things that the Western Hemisphere produces. So, and the things that we're talking about, what we want, when we say, or what we mean when we say an Islamic village, they don't have those things, right? So some Muslims actually believe that they're situated because they live around one another. That's not what we want. The other thing is that I think that so many Muslims, so many Muslims, so many Muslims, they believe that, or it seems like their concentration is on the dunya. Their concentration is on the dunya more than it is on establishing Islam. And that being the case, for them to sit down with us and talk about developing in the community with the purpose of establishing a strong Islam and establishing a strong place for ourselves in the akhirah, position in the akhirah, we please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So many Muslims in this country, we have to really just face the reality. We have to break the Muslims up into categories and see what kind of Muslims will be willing to do something like that and then go approach those like-minded Muslims, come together collectively with a small group of like-minded Muslims and do work in that direction. Because the majority of people, just like you said, the brothers you were sitting down with in Alabama, for whatever the reason is, whether it's prejudice, racism, nationalism, them being oblivious, them being too much concentration on the dunya, them thinking that everything is okay because to them the epitome of success is that their children get a degree and go on and get a job, or they don't see the necessity because their level of Islam and what they, what they consider to be Islamic success or human success is so basic and remedial, and their aims are so low. Whatever it is, those obstacles are real obstacles. So for us to build something like that to even start, and again, I don't want to jump to the gun and start talking about solutions before we even identify all of the problems, but for us to actually approach this issue and start moving forward, we have to realize that there's only that something like that is going to have to be done and carried out and started and by a small group of people who understand Salafiyya, and they understand the principles of their religion in their pure form. They understand the worthlessness of the dunya, and what our goals and our objectives should be in it, and the infinite value, right, of the akhirah, and what our goals and our objectives should be as it relates to seeking it. You know what I mean? And if that's not the kind of people who we sit down with and have this discussion, then before we get into what we need financially and what methods we're going to take towards attaining this or attaining that, before we get to any of that, none of that, it's not going to happen, man. And that's why so many people, even when this topic is brought up at dinner or just in a casual discussion, Allah, probably 95% of the people, man, is going to go over their head. There's so many different reasons why Muslims don't even see that to be a priority, man. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, let me step in for 1 second, Akh. I think if for brothers, for the listening audience, for brothers to understand what's intended, all you have to do, if you're looking at big city situations, all you have to do is look at least I can't speak for New York, but I can speak for LA. The Jewish community in West LA. The Jewish community in West LA literally control probably 65 to 75% of their community. They're literally camaradeing amongst themselves. They have their own schools. Their children are not in the public schools. They're in their own schools. They have their own businesses. The neighborhoods, it's not just storefronts, certain storefronts on the main streets, but they're also within the neighborhoods. That's why on the Saturdays you see them walking everywhere. Their situation is similar to what we're talking about, as opposed to a large group of Muslims living in an area, and within that area, that one area that they're living in, there may be 1 or 2 Muslim schools, and a lot of their children are going to public school. Sisters may be of other ethnic groups who from overseas, but yet they're coming up pregnant by kafir men here in the States, due to their mixing with the people, or the boys are striving to be just like the biggest drug guru, and even if they don't want to sell themselves, striving to be like the biggest drug guru, striving to be a baby B-dog or a little C-rag, and thus forth and so on. When we're talking about Islamic village, we're talking about something slightly different that shields and protects the children from those negative aspects, similarly to how you see the Yahud in West LA. But even as far as I'm concerned, West LA, that's still even a bad example, because when you're looking at establishing an Islamic village, you have to take into account the area you're in. You have to take that into account. Now, that's going to be the segment that we deal with. But before we go there, I want to take this brother. This brother's been waiting to speak. Khalil, unmute yourself, inshallah. Khalil, you still?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum
Alaikum
assalam wa
assalam
rahmatullahi
wa
wa barakatuh.
rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Sound like you got something for us, huh?
Yeah,
Alhamdulillah.
alhamdulillah. Barakallah feek.
Take the bar.
I was this conversation, you know, with brothers, and you have this because you're trying to figure out how to actually create environments to live some of the stuff that we read in books and listen to these lectures. And I was having this conversation with Ishmael about a week ago, and I was telling him, I said, there's a phobia that we have with Muslims. You know, when you're talking about the concept of building an Islamic village, and there's so many different moving parts with that, from the spiritual part, the moral part, the economic part. There's just so many different pieces in terms of putting it together. And then also finding, networking, coordinating with the people who are on that same wavelength and galvanizing some type of effort to move in that direction. And I was saying that what happens a lot of time with Muslims is that a lot of times we really don't want to live around each other. You know, you have the areas where people are just born in neighborhoods that are largely Muslim, but you don't see an Islamic lifestyle. You may look in some of our urban cities like Philly and Newark and some of these other cities in New York, but you know, Muslims are some of the biggest agitators of the unlawful activities in those communities. Like, you know, we understand that. We know that Muslims are some of the biggest agitators of the fitna that exist in those communities. But separate and apart from that, just galvanizing the people to say, yo, listen, we're going to put this plan together. What happens a lot of times, you don't have that motivation because of the spiritual struggles that Muslims, which we should hide from one another, but now it's vogue, it's in style to promote our disobedience. You know, we're proudly, arrogantly promoting our disobedience. So people to move together to be collectively, because you got to realize, dude, be like, listen, me coming together with brothers to put together to be somewhere where the adhan is called, I could walk and I see nothing but sisters covered up and so on and so forth. Like, nah, I prefer to be somewhere where I can still see the freaks, go hang out a few days a week, and then pull up on Juma Friday and act like nothing happened. Guys and girls, that's the mindset that happens in the community. So when we have that mindset, right, that mindset is an obstacle before a person even gets to that concept, because you ask yourself like, yo, what's so hard for us to say, yo, let's get together, let's buy these 50 acres somewhere, let's put together a blueprint, because there are Muslims that earn money. It's not like we poor, like we got to get that out, right? Like everybody's destitute, living from hand to mouth. No, there are Muslims that are doing well. They got good jobs, they got skills, they got set. So what's like, why haven't we amongst those of the Salafi community say, listen, we're gonna put together like the brothers did back in the early 80s with New Medina down there in Mississippi. There are other people, there are blueprints for us to look at that people have done and say, yo, we're going to put this together and we're going to go establish that. Outside of Imam Salihu Dajabi, Rahimullah, he was a brother from Gambia, used to be a chaplain in New York City, and he told us this years ago. He said, you know, I've been dealing with a lot of you African-American imams. He said, you know what, I know the biggest problem with y'all? And he told one of my mentors, Farouk, Imam Farouk Abdul Wali, and I was there. He said, what is it? He said, every one of y'all got this little masjid in your head that you run around with. And y'all always trying to steal from each other chicken coop. And it don't allow y'all to cooperate and work with each other. He said, all y'all got this little masjid in your head and y'all always stealing from each other chicken coop. You know, like he said, and that, you know, and that he said, that's the biggest problem with y'all. Y'all can't work with each other. He said, this is what I've noticed in being around with each other. So from the leadership down to the layman, you have the layman, we're just struggling with these issues. So what happens is that people to say, listen, to come together, you know, and there is a group that don't mind that. The point is, you got to find them, you got to pinpoint them, you got to develop some type of situation that allows them to come together and cooperate And like this old brother in FOI told me, Emmanuel, he said, listen, when he used to train me, he said, listen, bro, he said, before unity, there's a thing called cooperation. He said, so we got to first learn to cooperate with one another. So you find those dudes who are thinking and who feed into these heavyweight dialogues that are taking place and other platforms. And you say, listen, okay, we see we're these brothers, that we're these families that are willing to make this move and create something that maybe the other people, even if it's 10 families, man, that come together and say, we're going to buy these acreage. We're going to get together with people who we know, who are the plumbers, the electricians, the farmers, and all of these people that it take necessary to build this community. And we're going to create an example. Because if you keep trying to say we're going to get the masses, we're not going to get the masses. Right? It's that the masses are always going to follow. They're going to follow, inshallah, afterwards. But the reality is that, man, just to have Muslims to want to live around each other, that's an issue because we have so many different demons that we haven't submitted, and we are afraid to be around Muslims because we don't want them joints to pop out. And it don't allow me to be pseudo-Muslim the way I want to. If I'm around somewhere and it's everywhere and sisters like, yo, I can't wear niqab and abaya on Friday, but Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, throw these thought outfits on and then jump out there any kind of way. I can't do that if I'm living in a Muslim community. Same thing with Ak. It's like I can't be riding up into the Muslim community, blasting my music, smoking a blunt. You understand what I'm saying? And then I'm around the Muslims. I can't do that. Like, so these things that we love so much that supersede our Islamic character, that supersede what's legislated, that stuff is heavy on a lot of Muslims, and they don't want to give it up yet, man. And to establish a Muslim community, you know you got to give that stuff up. You gotta give that stuff up. So when y'all sitting there on the rostrum and y'all giving the footballs and y'all giving the classes and you trying to figure out why the people ain't motivated to make that move, I'm telling you from the guy on the ground, you talking to people, that's just the reality. People are not ready to give them things up yet to come around to sit with the Muslims and say, I'm going to live in an environment to where men and women don't intermingle as freely as they do, that Islam is promoted, and that for the brothers who made Ummah, who've been overseas and they became nostalgic or energized by what they experienced over there, to say, was that enough for you to say, listen, let's try to establish an Islamic community here? You know, there were certain things that I experienced when I was over there, but that thing right there, that's such a short-lived emotion. When we come back, that's just the reality. So when we're in these urban cities and we be in Philly and we be in Newark and all of that stuff, and it look like it, but it's the wrong has become so acceptable in these urban cities that it ain't like you just feel like some imams are afraid to even call things out because they like, yo, I don't even want these dudes to stop coming to Juma. You understand what I'm saying? Because it's just the unlawful amongst Muslims, and it's sad to say, I've lived it, I've experienced it. So I'm not even speaking from no armchair, self-righteous position. I'm talking about stuff that I know that I've experienced. I know that what happens, that when Muslims coordinate with each other, like, yo, meet me at the masjid, man. I'm gonna hit you off with that work, with that package after Juma. You know, like, this is stuff that happens, man. You understand what I'm saying? Dudes are doing, these are things that are happening, that are taking place. And so the wrong, when you pull up to the masjid, the parking lot, and dude get out the car and it smell like mad weed, or you standing next to somebody and he smell like he just smoked a 3.5 of the loudest exotic marijuana that exists. You feel what I'm saying? It's just it's exuding out of his pores. That happens all the time at the masjid. So when we have that mentality, that is impeding us from moving towards establishing an Islamic village, man. And I know that's real when I talk to brothers. And when you'll talk to them about anything, certain things get them excited, but you be like, yo, man, let's establish Islamic community. Like that glisten is not in their eyes because they know, like, damn, I don't want to live around Muslims because of what I'm struggling, the embarrassment. And it should be, well, that's a good idea because if I'm around Muslims, that's going to strengthen me. That's going to help me fight off these demons because I'm around the Muslims. But some people, the embarrassment that they like, yo, I can't do it. I don't want to be around Muslims. So they're not motivated for that. And I'm just trying to tell y'all that when we're talking about the Islamic village and why you may not get as many people energized and looking like, yo, let's do it. Let's figure it out. What can we do? Let's make it happen. Because I know one thing about people, when people want to do something, they're going to do it. Yeah. But this is one of the biggest reasons amongst the common folk, the laymen, the men, the women. This is one of the biggest reasons because we don't want to give up a lot of the things that we know is holding back our connection with Allah. And that in living in an Islamic community, especially one many of us say, listen, I subscribe to Salafi Aqidah, right? But in all actuality, there's several things in regards to legislation and behavior and morality that I have not made myself submit to. I know I say I'm Salafi and I agree with the terms, but I have things that I'm just still struggling with that I know I have not reconciled with that part of my life, the behavior, the manners, the morals of Ahlul Sunnah, of the ways that I know I should be. I have not reconciled it yet. And so I don't want to live around other brothers who I know are living it because I'm going to be embarrassed and I'm going to be shameful. And as you should be, that's a good sign. But we have to figure out a way to look at that and say, don't let what you're struggling with stop you from moving in the best direction. Don't let, if you have those demons you're struggling with, that's good that you have acknowledged that and Allah has blessed you to understand that you have that. But you should definitely want to come around stronger brothers because it's going to help you, and sisters because it's going to help you. So in terms of that Islamic village, I just think that's one of the biggest obstacles that we face from the common folk because of what we are struggling with, and we don't want to be around other people because, you know, like I was telling Ishmael in closing, with a lot of Muslims, man, backbiting is a pastime, and the only time it's a sin is when that they're a victim of it. Other than that, that joint is like waking up in the morning. You understand what I'm saying? Who can we talk about? Who business can we put out there? Who information we could put on the street? And if you tell a Muslim, listen, Akhi, what this is, the only time they remember those ayats of eating dead flesh and all of these things is when they are a victim of it. Other than that, that's like, Assalamu alaikum. Did you hear what happened with Fulan? That's how I go. So a lot of Muslims, due to that embarrassment and all of these things we struggling with, it stops us from being motivated to want to establish an Islamic village. Again, thank you, brothers, for these situations.
You know, some. You know, I want to focus on something that the brother said for a second too, because I think that's what he stated is an excellent example of what some Muslims try to pull off as it relates to an Islamic village, and that is Al Medina, New Medina. Excuse me, I believe that's the name of New Medina. New Medina was
Mississippi.
I'm sorry, say it again.
No, you're talking about in Mississippi, right?
Yes, in Mississippi.
New
Medina was a community that was established by the WD community in late 80s, early 90s. And that was the goal that they were going for. They wanted to be they wanted to basically be like a community outside of the major community. All right. And their thinking in that regard was good. They found an area, they targeted it, they bought a bunch of land, and they were going to develop it. And alhamdulillah, they actually raised about two generations, if I'm not mistaken, of Muslims on that land. But when their children started to become educated, they moved out and they had to close the school because now the school there's no need for the school because there's no youth there currently now. The point that I'm making with that Al Medina school is that they had the right idea. It could be debated amongst the people if the area itself was conducive for what they tried to do, or whatever else that people may debate. But the bottom line is, they are an example of a group of people that were trying to pull that off. And I think that when looking at that New Medina, looking at that particular example, and I think that we will have to discuss the preferred areas or the type of preferred area that would need to be targeted to establish an Islamic village. Now, when I say area, I don't mean the perspective of we should go to this city or this place or that place. I'm not asking the question in order to hear this city or that city, or to create or start the discussion of this city or that city, but more or less to deal with characteristics of the type of area that would be good to target. And I think that if we're talking about an area where we're saying we're just going to buy land somewhere, I think that that's a bad idea. And that may have been similar to the downfall. I don't even want to say downfall, but why New Medina never fully got off the ground, because it's still there. And the majority of the land, to my knowledge, and I know it's best, is undeveloped, but it's still there. And so I think that's an important discussion that needs to be had. What are the type of places that would need to be targeted? And so because I'm saying this, I'm going to give my input, and then I pass the mic to my brothers. Now, as far as I'm concerned, the type of area that would need to be that needs to be really considered. First and foremost, the big major cities are not a consideration at all. As far as I'm concerned, the New Yorks, the LAs, the Phillies, the Detroits, those places are not a consideration at all. Why? Because to a large degree, you're still connected to areas where there's a lot of filth and a lot of temptation, for lack of better expressions. I think that the type of area that would be better and more conducive for establishing an Islamic village, where you literally don't have to develop an infrastructure for the place, will be to target small towns that have maybe as low as 2,000 people, maybe as high as 30 or 60,000 people. But small towns of this nature, and I'll explain what I mean or why I say small towns. Because for one, let's say, for instance, you have a town of 30,000 people, and then 30,000 of us come in. 30,000 of us come into a locality like that. That means now 30,000 people is not a large number of people, but if you have a town that's 2,000 people or 30,000 people, then 30,000 Muslims come in, without a doubt, our presence, just from the aspect of numbers, will be felt. And there is as the expression goes, there is strength in numbers, especially in this society. But more so, when looking at a situation like that, is because you don't have some of the struggles of a New Medina, where you would need even more larger amounts of money to do simple things, because now you have to develop land. You have to develop, regardless if it's from piping, installing installing the water lines and, you know, and building structures from the ground up and things of that nature. You can go, like, I'll give you an example. There's a town where my job is at. It's only about 2,000 people in the town, but the town's boundaries, when looking at the boundaries, that this town or city or whatever we want to call it is very large, and probably only about 30 to 40% of it is developed. Right? They have their little downtown area, which is the most developed, sidewalks and that's what for so on. And there's a lot of land all around the rest of the area. And there's patches of developments here and there. But they have paved out streets, main water lines, and it's a situation where there are homes up for grabs, and there's even commercial property that's up for grabs in the area. Every time I drive through there, there's a commercial building, and I always see that's been up for grabs ever since I've been here, since 2018. And I say to myself, wow, it'd be nice if that building was a masjid or a school or something to this effect, you know. And so when you're going into those types of situations, there are advantages in those type of situations that you don't have in the larger cities, like the low cost of living, low cost for property. Likewise, the regulations in those areas are lower for people who want to do business creation or business development and things of that nature. The local regulations are fewer. Likewise, you know, the filth that you would see in the bigger cities, a lot of the filth are almost non-existent. So you don't have prostitutes walking down the street. You don't have Pookie and Ray Ray hanging out in the corner selling something. You know, a lot of those things, generally speaking, in those smaller environments, are non-existent. It doesn't mean that they don't have issues, but what I'm saying is the problems that you find in the bigger cities a lot of those problems are almost non-existent in these smaller areas. You know, and so those are some of the reasons why I would say I don't think necessarily getting land and having to develop the land from scratch is the alternative. But at the same time, remaining in the big city and targeting areas, I don't believe is an alternative neither, and Allah knows best. Any of the brothers want to chime in?
I agree with you 100%. Again, I believe a lot of the communities that we have, you know, are kind of retrofit because it came out of opportunity, right? Because this is where Muslims were already living. This is where Muslims started to gather, you know, so on and so forth. So a lot of our neighborhoods developed out of that. So undoubtedly, we have neighborhoods scattered throughout America. But we're not talking about neighborhoods. We're talking about communities. Now, one key difference between a neighborhood and between a community is a neighborhood is just a place where people have collected and where they live at. Whereas a community, then this is a place where we control the economy of that community, or we have a great impact on the local economy of that community, where we have businesses, where we have our infrastructure and facilities and things that we need. This is what we don't have here in America in any outstanding extent. And when I say that, like the brother mentioned of the Jewish community out in LA, those from the New York area, we know the Jewish community in New York. We know how much of the community in which they have a control over. I mean, they have their own paramedics, right? They have their own EMS service.
They have their own security. They don't even call the police. They have their own security. The Muslims in
They're
the Muslims in Hamtramck and these places, they don't have those things. They're not
no, they
even on the
don't.
same level.
These are just one. These are neighborhoods, right? Two, and Allah knows best, but doesn't seem like they were really put together with any forethought in mind. It's just something that just happened. What do you call it? A lot of them, yeah, they gathered around each other for whatever reason. They gathered around each other, but it doesn't seem as if there was a lot of forethought and in actually building that community, right? Whereas we have to. I guess my question is, because of course we're not here to offer all the solutions. We're not here to to present the problem and then to fix it by ourselves, because as is known, it's going to take a lot more people than just the brothers that are on this panel to do that. But if anything, we're here to spark the idea and to put the idea inside of people's heads and to show them the need, why we need something like this to take place, and to start putting forth the thought and the planning to doing certain things. So and I would propose that by asking everyone a series of questions, and that is, based upon our current situations and how we're living right now, do you really see the environment that we're living in conducive for our great grandchildren to still be Muslim, to still have Islamic values, to still be strong upon their deen? The manner that we live in right now, is that conducive for that we see 5 generations down the line our descendants still being Muslim? And if not, then what are you doing as relates to helping establish a foundation that can help the Muslims 5 generations from now hold on to their religion, right? Where's our infrastructure? When it comes to our schools, our basic things, we don't even have basic things. We don't have schools. We don't have kindergartens. We don't have programs. We don't have marakis. We don't have anything from an educational standpoint that in most places that can really help our children. And in those places where we have some of those things, we're still lacking in other aspects of those things. So we don't have everything that we need. We still have to go outside of ourselves and outside of our community, to have certain things fulfilled. Another question I would ask is, when we spend our money, how many times does it circulate in our community, right? When we spend our money, how many times does our money circulate within the Muslim community? Unfortunately, you find a lot of times when we spend that initial dollar, it's outside of our community. When we spend that initial dollar, it's outside of our community, because we don't have certain stores that are ran by the Muslims, right? And I'm not talking about those cancers. I'm not talking about those cancers within our society and within the inner city. I'm not talking about the bodega that's ran by Achi and them that sell pork, that sell alcohol, that sell drug paraphernalia so they can get whatever they want, so they can smoke their marijuana and things of this nature, pipes and all this nonsense. I'm not talking about those stores. I'm not talking about those stores that are a problem, where they sell scratch-offs and lottos and any type of haram thing that you want to get in that neighborhood. I mean, a total cancer on that neighborhood. Again, when we look at the Muslims in China, when they were successful, they benefited the society. They brought things to the society that was a benefit to the society. They were not a cancer upon the society. They were not a detriment to their society, but they benefited the society. They brought the society goods, and they brought the society services that were lacking there, right? So my question is, where is this amongst us? Where do we have these type of communities? Where do we have these type of efforts that we're actually bettering the society that we're living in an organized fashion, right? Now, of course, alhamdulillah, the Muslims are doing some things that are awesome, like food pantries, like giving out clothes and very charitable things that are awesome. And inshallah ta'ala, we need to build upon these things. But my point is that where are our communities? And before even where are our communities, where are the thinkers from the Muslims who are even thinking along these lines, who are actually doing the research, doing the footwork, doing the homework to find out which areas are best suited to establish the likes of these things, which areas are best suited from an economical standpoint, from the cost of living in those areas, from the crime rate in those areas, so on and so forth. Which areas are most conducive that we can set up where we can actually build a masjid, build homes around that masjid, build a whole subdevelopment around that masjid, a place where not only could we live in, but a place where it has close proximity to business areas where we can put local businesses in that community that we can access by walking distance or a very short car ride. Where are the places most conducive and suitable for that? Who has put forth that type of thought and that type of thinking when it comes to even picking the location of the potential masjid? And you will find, unfortunately, is very far. It's very few and miles and miles and miles of distances in between. And this is part of the problem. We're not starting with the end in mind. If our objective is only to build a masjid, then we have already lost. We have already lost. Subhanallah al-Azim, Shaykh al-Shamri, Hafidhullah Ta'ala, he mentioned, and this is something I want to say because, you know, you have some brothers who really have this understanding that the ulama, they don't care about the Americans, right? You have some brothers, the ulama don't care about the Americans. They don't care about what's going on over here. They have no concern for us and so on and so forth. And whoever says that, I'm going to tell you right now, you a liar. You're a liar, you're ill-informed, and you need to shut your mouth. Because the reality of it is that I've seen personally many from the ulama that have an extreme concern for the Americans. They have an extreme concern for the Westerners. And this is just one example. Shaykh al-Shamri, he had arrived to Medina well after Isha because he was traveling, right? Because he doesn't live in Medina, so he was traveling. He arrived in Medina well after Isha. And he made sure to contact the brothers inside of our Umrah package at the time. Ustad Ormesan, he was there at the time, and others from the brothers, right? So they were contacted. And the Sheikh, he said, please bring all of the imams and all of the presidents and the you know, the whoever's a mudir or what have you of the Islamic centers, bring them all to the hotel. Bring them all to the room that I'm staying in, because I want to have a talk with them. I want to you know, talk with them. So alhamdulillah, the brother gathered the brothers. Brother Abu Yusuf Khalifa, he was there. Our brother Abu Muhammad Nadir al-Jamaiki, he was there, right? And others from the brothers and those responsible for Islamic communities. So we all went. Mind you now, this is well after Isha, and the Sheikh, he sat and he spoke to us and he gave us a lot of advice. He asked us what's going on in America, what's the situation there now, you know, how is the climate? Now, this, of course, was during the previous president. So he was asking, you know, are you finding any difficulty in practicing your religion and so on and so forth, showing so much concern, you know, what's going on. Long story short, and the point I want to highlight is that the Sheikh, he asked us, he said, how many of you brothers have Maracas? So the brothers, upon first hearing it, didn't fully, I think, conceptualize the question and what the Sheikh, he was asking. We didn't really listen to the verbiage of the Sheikh. He said, how many of you have Maracas? Everybody, and he kind of, you know, raised their hand like, well, all of us, you know. And then the Sheikh, he said, no. I don't mean masajid. I don't mean masajid. I mean, how many of you have Islamic centers where you have schools, where you have centers to learn Quran, centers to learn Arabic, like you have all in one place? How many of you have structures like this where you're taking care of the ibadat, right? The religious needs, meaning that you have a place that can adequately put the, fill the people in for Jumu'ah, for the 5 daily prayers, where you're teaching classes, so on and so forth. But at the same time, a place that you also have an area in there that's for recreation, where the kids can come in and can play, where they can come and do their homework, where there's a library, where there are computer labs, so on and so forth, where a place where you have areas that are designated for counseling for those Muslims who need counseling. Those areas that are dedicated and a facility dedicated that if a person is going through whatever in their marriage, and they can come there for counseling. Those who come there, need to get a medical checkup, so on and so forth. How many of you have Marakiz, Islamic centers like this? How many of you have that? SubhanAllah, everybody hand went down. Everybody was looking crazy. And then he said, okay, well, how many got your Marakiz? At least will you have a school? How many left? Some of the brothers, their hands stayed up. Very few, though. Very few hands stayed up. The Sheikh, he says, listen, see, this is part of the problem. In America, you're in the West. The masjid is all you have. So you can't look at the masjid just as a place where you come, you pray 5 times a day, you have Jumu'ah, you have some classes here and there on the Musalla floor, and then that's it. He said, no, because you need way more than that. The Muslim community needs way more than that. The Muslim community needs a place where they can gather for recreation. They need a place where they can gather to break fast with each other. They need a place where they can gather to get counseling. They need a place where they can gather to learn Arabic, so the children can learn, the school, so on and so forth. You need all of these things. So you have to start looking at building your masajid with this in mind, that you have to build Marakiz, Islamic centers, are all in one place where the children can come, they can play basketball, and then when they hear the adhan, go pray, and then go do their homework, come back, pray, so on and so forth. You need these type of places that will be a sanctuary for the Muslims, that will help them fortify their religion while living in America. The Sheikh, he gave us some beautiful advice. We didn't leave there till maybe an hour before Fajr. So when you talking about, whoever talking about the ulama don't care, have no concern for the Americans, you a liar. You a liar, or you don't know what you're talking about, so you need to shut your mouth. They have tremendous concern of what's going on here, and they give awesome and outstanding advice and directions of what we can do to better our situations here in the West. So the point is that as the Sheikh, he asked us, I want to put that to everybody that's out there. Where are these places at? Where are these places at? Please tell me, let me know, put me up on it. And also, who is willing? Who from amongst the people that may ever hear this are willing to put forth this effort to start establishing the likes of these places? I get it. Not everybody's going to move from where they're at. I understand. Not everybody's going to relocate to another place. I understand. The places that we're in, how many of these could we establish around America? Could it be one in every city? Could it be one in everywhere that there are Muslims? Could we have one? Of course we could. I have no doubt about that in my mind. We could. I see the cars that pull up to the masjid here in Apopka, Florida. I see the cars. Okay. I see the Mercedes. I see the Land Rovers, right? Or the Range Rover, excuse me. I see the Range Rovers. I see the Mercedes. I see the BMWs. I see. So the money's here. The money's here. We have the money. The problem is, where are the organizers? Where's the organization? Where is the planning? Where is the starting with the end in mind? Where's that at? That's what we need more of. We need organizers, and we need people who are going to help and sacrifice, and I need their resources to help to establish the likes of these things. Where are these people? If they're there, please contact me. Contact me. I'm on social media. At Abu Abdussalam on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, wherever it is. DM me. Contact me. Those people who are movers and shakers, those people who they really want to establish some things and they really want to move forward. Please contact me, and I can share more with you what the Sheikh he mentioned, and we can really start planning bi'ithnillahi ta'ala. But the reality of it is that it has to be done. And whoever feels like, no, we really don't need it, and so on and so forth, then hey, share with me your plan. Share with me your plan that will aid the Muslims 5-10 generations from now remain steadfast and firm on their religion. Share that plan with me, so that here in Apopka, Florida, we can start implementing some of that as well. If you have a different plan, please share it, please.
And we got a caller that's been waiting to speak. Yusuf Ibn Umoy. I believe this is a brother out of Philly. He called in last week, if I'm not mistaken.
No.
Yusuf, you there?
نعم.
السلام عليكم.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله. كيف حالكم؟
Alhamdulillah.
الحمد
حياك
لله.
الله.
طيب
كيف
طيب.
حالك؟
Alhamdulillah. I
حياك
wanted to
الله.
touch on a few things. So bear with me. My thoughts are kind of scattered because I've been on here for a while, but I did want to talk about like some of the causes I feel like that's keeping some of the communities or the cities maybe from having like a village or institutes for the kids and plans for the future and things of that nature. One of the things I believe is way too much division amongst Ahlul Sunnah. And what I mean by that is a lot of times we don't call for the help and aid of this city or this community because they're not aligned with us. Other words, and the mentality is, you know, if you're not aligned with us, we're not calling for you to be aided because I've witnessed this. It's communities where you have plumbers, you have electricians, you have businessmen, but they're only being told to help and aid this particular community, not take this not take this trade and aid the whole Muslim city or whatever. Because like I live in Philly, and in my personal opinion, a city like Philadelphia with that many Muslims is no way it shouldn't be an institute for the children, and there's no way it shouldn't be what y'all speaking of, like a village. Like I think Abdul Salam mentioned, like you go in some of these Jewish communities Saturdays, they walking everywhere. They have security. They have, with the amount of Muslims in certain cities, is no way we shouldn't have that. No way at all. And I think one of the things as well is in our communities, like I think the brother mentioned earlier, we don't want to live around each other and things of that nature. I think one of the things that needs to be taught to the people is like uprooting our communities, meaning we have to be taught not to hate each other. Because one thing about, I don't like using this word, but those foreigners in their little communities, what they do understand is brotherhood. They understand we need this for our children in the future. We gonna, you know, love one another for the sake of Allah. Because one thing I know, you read some of these old stories about the Salaf and all that other stuff, no matter what was going on, they understood Muslims stick together and what brotherhood is. And I think that's something that we lack. A lot of us are not being taught truly what brotherhood is. And that's I'm not gonna say that's the only way, but that's a means of uprooting your community. Because to establish these things, I feel like we have to build from the ground up. So you have to rectify your community. You have to teach us, like, what I mean by education, I mean we don't respect education where we come from. Meaning we don't respect that this is my brother in Islam, this is my brother. I want good for him. I don't want to rob him. I don't want to shoot him. I don't want to be jealous of him. We have to teach the people these things. We have to teach the people to really want good for each other. Because if that's not there, we're not going to care what's being established in our communities. We're not going to care what's being established. You get what I'm saying? So these are like some of the things that I just wanted to mention about maybe was not being done or whatever in these communities. Because like I said, in some of these communities, unfortunately, you have, I've heard it where we got an electrician in this community, he's going to help this person out, we recycle that money to help this person out. If this was being done across the board for the Muslims, things could be established. And also, when we call it having these GoFundMe things, I think it should be something where as though it's like, if we're people of Ahlul Sunnah, we call it to the same thing, et cetera, et cetera. The funding shouldn't just be for this masjid or this place. Why not have it for all the massages nationwide? Like whatever goes in here is going to be distributed to the Muslims across the Muslims of Ahlul Sunnah across the nation. I just think we need these type of things. And like I said, the community, we just need to be educated on wanting true brotherhood. Because like I said, one thing with them foreigners, and you read the books of the Salaf and stuff like that, no matter the different, they understood brotherhood. They understand we don't want to depend on the kuffar. They understood that. We don't understand that. Our mentality, unfortunately, you're not with us or with our side or with our group, we're not going to call for you to be aided to, and we're not going to come together to try to make something for the future. Because like Abdul Salam said, how many of us are thinking down the line 3-4 generations from now and feel comfortable saying our children or grandchildren are going to have something for the Muslims? Me personally, Allahu Alam, like the way it's going, I don't see that. And we have to get things put in our heads and in our children's heads to like really want good for the Muslims, because unfortunately, I feel like a lot of the Muslims don't understand and hasn't been taught and is not being put in their head to really love and want good for the Ummah. I think that's something that is really missing. And I think we need to get back to the basics. Of course, we teach Tawheed, we warn against Bid'ah and things of that nature, but we need to be teaching the Muslims manners, adab, how to deal with the Muslims, what not to do to a Muslim, what to want for the Muslims, what to want for the Ummah. Because unfortunately, if we mention bid'ah, you know, this and the third, people, they hasten, they ready to speak. We talk about manners and things that is embedded in Muslim children from the past and in Muslim countries. People are far away from wanting to learn that stuff. Wallahu a'lam.
Yeah, man. Barakallahu feek. You said a lot of beneficial stuff. Everything's beneficial out here. I want to touch on something that you said regarding Muslims, specifically the people of the Sunnah, and how the division causes us to prioritize a group of brothers, a particular brothers. You know, we maybe my sheikh and your sheikh don't get along, so you know, any support that I'm giving is going to be given to those people who agree with my sheikh. All this nonsense, right?
Yeah.
Without a doubt, that's one of the things that's separating us. And again, we mentioned earlier, you know, some Muslims, they have different priorities. There are a lot of Muslims who do not see the importance of having an Islamic village. That's because we're talking about it's extremely important that we continue, barakallahu fiqh, akhi, like you just did, to mention out the reasons why this has not happened yet, and what are some of the potential dangers, or not dangers, but potential obstacles that can, you know, show their ugly heads should we try to embark upon something like this? Because we have to be prepared for them, and we have to have a strategy in place to try to, you know, maneuver around or break through as many of them as possible. And one of them is definitely because due to the separation that the people have from Ahl Sunnah amongst themselves. And another one is what we mentioned earlier, and that is that there are Muslims who, you know, their concept of unity and togetherness is not based off of creed. Muslims are not even getting married based off of aqeedah and manhaj. They're getting married a lot of times just based off of, you know, cultural connection or, you know, tribalism or something like that. So to build a community based off of, you know, like-mindedness and same aqeedah and same manhaj, like the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, that's why they were so successful, because everybody's on the same aqeedah and everybody's on the same manhaj. And early on, you know, in the earlier time, during the time of the Khilafah was under the rule of Ahl Sunnah, and the people in general, you know, those first few generations, the people in general were people of the Sunnah, the communities, and definitely the Khulafa. So the ideology and the concepts and that, your aqeedah, your manhaj is going to affect everything. It's going to affect the political infrastructure. It's going to affect how you set up your education. It's going to affect, you know, nutrition. It's going to affect everything, because all based off the Quran and based off the Sunnah and based off how the Salaf understood the Quran and Sunnah, right? So when you have a system like that, even a small village, even a household, is going to function properly. So now we're faced with the challenge of trying to get some Muslims together, right, who don't even have the same aqeedah, manhaj, and approach towards Islam. So that means that, all right, there's only a few of us, right, that may be able to share these ideologies. Now, let's start from the top. The Muslims in general here in the West got a lot of Muslims. Now let's remove the Ikhwan al-Muslimin and the Jama'at al-Tabligh or any Takfiris or Sufis or anybody like that, for a number of reasons. Number one, I don't want to be around the people, right? And I don't think any person Ahl Sunnah wants to live around those people. That would be in contradiction to what we teach and what we call them, we learn from the book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I don't mean from a Hizbi standpoint. I mean from an actual practical standpoint of how we're going to establish Islam in its pure form, a village where people are practicing Islam in its pure form when we have other people there. And I'm not talking about awam or juhalat, common people who are ignorant. I'm talking about you try to sit down with other leaders and the leaders of their marakis and imams, and they are clearly on different manhaj, and their approach towards Islam is different. That's not going to work. We already know that. So now we have to kind of exclusify ourselves and restrict ourselves to the people of the Sunnah. Now, when we look at the people of the Sunnah who are from Ahl Sunnah in a general sense, or let's just say Salafis, or let me even say Ahl Sunnah in the general. No. Let's stick to Salafis. Salafis in a more specific sense. Now we got to look at the brothers who are not mad at each other because you told me my sheikh said this Fulan was this or that, or he's with al-Matlabi, or he's with al-Halabi,
Ismail, let me step in for a second. Let me step, because I don't like all this beating around the bush with stuff. Yusuf.
No.
Hold on for one second.
I'm not beating around the bush. I'm not beating around the bush. I don't want to lose
about you, but let me step in.
I don't want to lose my point. All right.
As the host for a second, hold on. As the host, hold on for 1 second. Yusuf, when you say Ahl Sunnah divided in Philadelphia, what masjids are you talking about?
What I'm saying is you have the brothers at Nabawiya and Ben Baz, and if you're aligned with them,
stop right there. Okay, so first and foremost, if we're going to have a discussion about Ahl Sunnah, then Germantown and Ben Baz shouldn't even be in the equation. And at this point right now, when are we going to start ignoring those people? Because it's clear the Hizbiyah that's with those guys, and the Haddadi tendencies that's with those guys.
No.
So if we want to start talking about unity amongst Ahl Sunnah, how are they even in the equation?
Well, I mentioned them in the sense
One second, I'm not finished. That's rhetorical. What needs to happen at this point, we need to start ignoring the prattling and the rattling of people like Hassan al-Somali, the elementary schoolboy flip-flop tactics of people like Anwar Wright, the striving to be the biggest sideshow flunky aspirations of people like Hamza Abdul Razak and Jamil Finch, and move on with our dawah.
Yeah.
So when we start having these discussions about Ahl Sunnah in Philly, for them to still keep coming up in the equation, that's a part of the problem.
No. Well, I just want to mention one thing. When I mentioned them, F1 Ismail, I just want to make this one point, F1. I want to mention them in the sense of, because I know where I stand at with them is clear to me, but I was mentioning them in the sense of I've seen the progress in their communities. And what I mean by that is I've seen the plans and the ideas that they put together. And what I'm saying is I just feel that it's sad that only those type of plans is being called to for them. You get what I'm saying? What I'm saying is, like, for instance, we're going to give an example. You go up Germantown Avenue, you have a masjid, you have a dawah center, you have a coffee shop, you have, like, it's a little community. And what I'm saying is, there's no way that, I'm not going to say the entire city, but it should be multiple communities like that in a place like Philadelphia and probably Newark and other places like that. That's what I mean, and that's why I mentioned them. It's clear to me what they call to, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just saying they have a lot of tradesmen and stuff in their meshes, but it's just unfortunate brothers only want to aid them because of what they're being taught. And that's what I mentioned them for, because there's a lot of brothers out here who are plumbers, electricians, and all this stuff that can help a lot of the masajids and like have stuff established, but they're not doing it based off what they're being taught. And I just wanted to clear.
What I would suggest first and foremost, when it comes to the brothers in Philly, what I would suggest, because there's talent in the communities, the actual communities of Ahl Sunnah. There's talent in those communities. The thing about it is there's two things that need to be looked at. One, a lot of the administrators of the masajid have a handful dealing with the masajid. So the administrators may not necessarily be organizers outside of what they're doing as it relates to their duties to the masjid. And that's okay. There can't be any resentment for those brothers if they are fulfilling their duties to the masjid in a productive manner. That's okay. But one of the things that the brothers are going to have to understand is that everything doesn't have to go through the masjid. Everything doesn't have to go through the masjid. And so the people who have talent within the communities of Ahlul Sunnah, and when I say the communities of Ahlul Sunnah, I mean Ahlul Sunnah, not people with Hizbi tendencies, not people with Haddadi tendencies. So what I'm saying is that the brothers are going to have to galvanize it. It may not necessarily be the administration of a masjid that galvanizes the talent within the community and establish projects and establish ventures within the community. But because it's not the people at the administrations of the masajid, does that mean now that it just doesn't happen? Because a lot of times people have the mentality that the masjid is supposed to do everything. That's a mentality that we have to snap out of. If we see problems within the community that need fixing, and the masjid is overwhelmed with the duties of the masjid, then what's wrong with a group of brothers coming amongst themselves and saying, you know what, let's establish a school. Ahlul Hadith needs a school over here. That school could service the Ahlul Hadith and the Masjid Wasatiyah community, because those two masajid are very close in proximity.
Next to each other, no.
Yeah, or somebody saying that when dealing with Masjid Mukbil,
No.
and thus forth and so on. Or brothers coming together and establishing something else that's needed for the community. You don't necessarily need the masjid to organize it. And I think that that's one mentality that is aiding us in failing, right? Because a lot of times we have this mentality that the masjid is supposed to do it, and so, and you don't need the masjid's permission to do something that will be of benefit for the general community.
No.
And so, and I know you're a person that's in Philly. You know Philly better than I know Philly. But what masjid do you frequent, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm usually at Mukbil or the Family Center, and I recently started going to Masjid Ibn Taymiyyah when they opened up.
Okay, so let's take a look at Masjid Mukbil and Imam Muslim Family Center. You don't know anybody that does carpentry or anything of that nature at any of those two masajid or masjidain?
Not a lot of brothers, but yeah, I know brothers with certain trades now.
Yeah, so there is talent there, right?
No.
Right. So this is what I mean when I say we have to galvanize the talent. You have to galvanize the talent, and don't look for the administration at those places to get it together, because they may have their hands filled with operating the masjid. And by the permission of Allah, they've created, by Allah's permission, I don't want to call it like a service, but that service for the Muslims to benefit from, to be able to come in and make the 5 salawat, and to be able to come in and have a place to have Jumu'ah and thus forth and so on. They're providing that for the community. The community has to now say and assess and say, okay, we need these other things. Barakallahu fihim, to the administration and to the of both these places. They're doing this, but we need these other things. So let's get with the necessary people within the community that can help assist in establishing these other things. Because one of the things that brothers have to recognize as it relates to a blessing that's been bestowed upon them is the fact that there are communities, there are masajid where large groups of Muslims come to. I've been to both Masjid Mukbil and Imam Muslim Family Center, not for Jumu'ah on any of those times, but outside of Jumu'ah, and there was a lot of people attending. When I came, there was a lot of people there at both. And so once you find that there's a lot of people, then there's talent amongst the community. There's talent amongst the community. So now you have to tap into the talent within the community to better the situation of the community.
No,
Now,
I, I, I
Ismail.
think
all right.
if I can cut in real fast, I think what the brother was trying to say and mentioning those brothers over there is that that mentality and that hizbiyah that they're upon is part of the problem, because undoubtedly there's a lot of talent in the overall Muslim community in general, but when you have individuals that have this type of mentality that we're only going to help and aid and cooperate with people who are upon what we're upon, and everybody else, everybody else is a hizbi, everybody else is, this and that, troublemaker, whatever the case is, right? And then we're going to interact with them, although they say they're Salafi, but we're going to interact with them as if they're people of innovation. This is part of the problem, and this has been a tremendous hindrance to the overall progress of the Muslims. And it's sad that you see some people may have good ideas, like you have people from over there and they got good ideas as it relates to putting coffee shops and things of this nature, but they're so limited in their mind and they're so short-sighted due to the effects of the hizbiyah that they're upon, that they can't see beyond a little street, right? And the reality of it is that as good as that is, that's a good start maybe, but that's definitely not the end of it. We definitely need more than that. They still don't have a school. They still don't have a high school. They still don't have, these vital things that a community needs. And the brother could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is more so where he was going, just pointing out that this mentality actually is part of the problem.
Now, Ismail, before you go, Ismail, I just want to touch on what he just said. Yeah, that's what I was saying, because what I'm trying to say, not that you need the administrations, I feel like you need people who have a voice. And what I mean by that is because say you in between Masjid Mukbil, Masjid Ibn Taymiyyah, Family Center, Ahla Hadith. Now, say I'm a person, I go to all of the masajids, but sometimes, unfortunately, you may have brothers who do have a trade, but they say, I don't get down with Family Center. But they go to Mukbil, they go to Ibn Taymiyyah. Or you may have brothers who, I go to Family, I don't get down with Mukbil. What I'm saying is, I think if the people who really have a voice, or if not the imams, but the people who have a voice and authority can just, is it possible for them to come together and sit down and say, look, we're going to iron out these issues. We don't follow the hizbiyah. We all agree upon X, Y, and Z. We're going to iron out these nitty wrinkles that shouldn't affect us establishing something. And that's the only question I wanted to end with you, brothers, or whatever. Barakallah fi.
What I was saying before was that, and just for the record, because I think we kind of got off topic for a second.
Mm-hmm.
When I was talking and Najeeb cut in, I understand your passion and, different things that you may, feel the community needs to be aware of, but we got to stay on topic, right? And we just got off topic because I'm not talking about, me. I've been calling out this nonsense before a lot of the brothers. A lot of the brothers just got, these problems. I've been dealing with these problems. It's nonsense. I'm not as upset about it as everybody else because I went through my upset about it 10, 11, 12 years ago when me and Abu Layla first started to catch wreck with this nonsense. So with me, I don't really have to. I already established my stuff, alhamdulillah. All of that beef, going at the nonsense right at the throat, did it 10, 11 years ago. I don't even know what's going on with the brothers. I don't know any recent disagreements. The examples I use are probably going to be outdated because I already been there, done that. And if I ever have to go there and do that again and deal with this nonsense and call out names, I'll do it. I have no problem. Anybody who knows me know that I have absolutely no problems at all. I don't never beat around no bush. I don't even know what bush is. You understand what I'm trying to say? If something go on and something needs to be mentioned, then I'm going to mention it. But at the same time, from a strategic standpoint,
when I have a purpose, like the purpose we have today, which is talking about establishing an Islamic village, that's what I'm going to stick to, because I don't want us to digress and get distracted. So when you look for whatever the reason is, because let's exclude brothers, let's exclude a particular group of brothers. You have brothers who don't have any haddadiyah, they don't have any hizbiyah or any kind of nonsense with them, that still can't get along, right? Because of what they claim to be manhaj problems. Whether it's because somebody's ignorant, they don't really understand the manhaj of Salafi, which is the majority of cases. Whether it's because people are just confused about the difference between, someone mentioning a statement with no dalil, and at the same time expecting people to follow them, and if they don't follow them, they want to. There are brothers who aren't even affiliated with, that particular group of brothers that we're discussing, and still have some of those traits, but at the very same time have, as far as they're concerned, freed themselves from those brothers. And the reason why I'm not mentioning names, because I don't want to digress. I don't want us to get distracted. We have a focus. We're going to do that. If we're going to go into names and start bringing out manhaj points or whatever, we could do that anytime we had this conversation. I'm up, alhamdulillah. I'm not sleepy. We could go right into that. I have no problem with that. But I don't like to get distracted. Hold on, Nak. Let me finish, because I don't want to get distracted again. That'll be the third time that I got cut off. So let me just finish this. And I know you meant well. I don't mean it like, because I benefited. Every time I get cut off, I listen quietly and I learn something every time. So I don't want you to think that I have a problem being interrupted. That's not my problem. But I'm just letting you know for clarity and letting our listeners know that my methodology of presenting myself is that I've been in enough discussions to know, because I'm the number one person that goes off topic when I speak. So for me, in order to keep myself and my train of thought organized, I try to select my words carefully so I don't wind up either myself going into a topic that's beneficial, but it's going to take me away from my point, or invite my brothers to get involved in a topic that's beneficial, but that's going to take me or them or both of us together away from my point. So my point is that whatever the reason is, and perhaps I shouldn't have used that example, because there's so much weird stuff going on right now amongst the brothers. All of us, we have, a lot. We're recovering from so much misappropriation when it comes to our dawah salafiyah, that it's almost like we just stepped out of intensive care. You know what I mean? So for me to use an example, like the example I use, talking about the brothers who may not want to work with you because of the boogeyman claim that you with this group or with that group, right? When they sell you with al-Ma'rabi or al-Halabi or whatever they sell you with these days, when 80% of the people don't even know who those people are, right? Just me using those examples could definitely strike a nerve. That we could strike those examples from the record. Whatever it is that the people of the Sunnah have right now amongst them. Some people, again, it's manhaj based. Some people it's personal. Some people, they're just weird. It's jealousy. There's so many different things that the people of the Sunnah, because remember I started at the top. I said Muslims in general, right? Muslims in general. Let's look at the Muslims in general. Now we got to look at, okay, if we want to build a village, who are the most qualified people, or rather the only qualified people that we can involve when it comes to building this village? And that's going to be the people of Ahl Sunnah. So now we start to look at Ahl Sunnah, right? In the more specific sense, not the general sense, Ahl Sunnah versus the Ash'ari and all of these, big, we start looking at the people of the Sunnah as it relates to the greater people of Bid'ah. Then now we get to Ahl Sunnah, we got to break Ahl Sunnah down in groups, the core essence, the people that really follow Dalil. And let's jump right to the meat. The people who we actually can sit down and talk to. I can sit down and have a conversation with Yusuf or with Najeeb or with Sadiq. And if I make a mistake, they have no problem saying Allah said, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, this we learn from the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. And now, because alhamdulillah, we share the same aqeedah manhaj, it's going to be easy for me to take it. Those kinds of brothers, that kind of ta'awun. Okay, when we start to look at that, because that's really what it's going to take. So we don't run into any political rifts, any manhaj rifts. One person who think that this is something we should do, and the other person think that that's what we should do. Because wallahi, if we don't move in unison and have people around us who are like-minded, especially in this area like we're talking about right now, the difference between Salafiyah and Haddadiyah and Hizbiyah, if somebody is not on the same page with us, we'll start to establish that community and it'll fall apart overnight, like so many masajid have fell apart. You're talking about we're talking about a village. Masajid have fallen apart because of people and their nonsense, right? So we have to now We started it with the Muslims in general. Now we're going to Ahl Sunnah. Now we're talking about the people from Ahl Sunnah that we can actually trust and lean on to handle, to approach situations that are textually based off the Quran, based off the Sunnah, based off the methodology of the Salaf, and that's the springboard or the baseboard that we're going to use to solve our differences, to come up with our agenda, to formulate our agenda, our goals, our objectives. It's always going to be based off of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed, as opposed to some other nonsense that a lot of the people are on. So now we start to look for that core group, our selection of who we're going to involve is going to become even smaller. So now when we got the small group of people, now we got to go to the people we actually know personally and we're comfortable with. Okay, so I'm comfortable with my co-panelists enough for the years I've known them and the respect I have for them as men and so on and so forth, the good things I've seen from them, years ago, and even now more so, interacting with the brothers on a more concentrated basis with the programs and living down here with Sadiq. My level of trust and comfort with the brothers is even more than it was before. Not that it was due to the lack thereof in the past, but it's just, when you don't live by somebody, you're not talking to somebody on a weekly basis or daily basis, you don't even know, you don't know a lot about them from an intimate standpoint. So now getting to know the brothers even more, just like I know some other brothers intimately from before and personally from before, I can think of a few brothers who I actually believe that if I was to sit down and talk to them and say, listen, this particular town, this particular area, we need to try to move there. We need to try to figure out a financial strategy, even if we just start with 15 families. We move into this neighborhood, or one of us may be in a particular area, like I think the area with me and Sadiq are right now has a lot of potential. And I don't think we're going to be able to get on a bullhorn and say, look, we need 25 of y'all to come around right now. And everybody, this one over here work for MTA, and that one over there work for what's the joint in Philadelphia? The SEPTA. That one over there worked for SEPTA. And this one worked for Amtrak, and he probably can't get transferred because he just started. He's out in Georgia. And that one over there is in Ohio. It may not be easy to put this big bulletin out and say, look, we need 20, I'm going to call it 25 brothers that I know and I trust, and get them to come and leave their union-based jobs or their residency in that hospital or wherever it is they are to come down and build. But I need to be able to we need to come up with a practical number of people, right? And from the people that we trust and that we feel comfortable with, invite them to a particular area. Again, it could be an area that we already live in or an area that we may want to move to. But in my opinion, I think that, we know enough brothers that we trust and are comfortable with enough that we can look at where they are and the potential for that community, like-minded people, not no people that their minds are frivolous and underdeveloped to such an extent that they would actually say something stupid like, oh, he disagreed with my sheikh, so we ain't gonna send a carpenter over there. Like Najeeb said, they're not even part of the equation. They're not even part of it. We're not even part of it, right? They're not even part of it, but we have to vet and screen and make sure that whoever it is that are going to be part of the founders of this project have at least the essential qualities necessary so we can move in that direction. And then we come up with a practical group, 5, 10, 15 people. We know that it may be lonely. Some people may, if you have the kind of job that you can leave and get into something else, or the brothers have some work opportunities for you, or you have some money to invest, or you want to start a business, or whatever it is. If you have the ability to move to that area, then everybody needs to move to that area and start building small. That's if we're not going to just go out and buy property and start moving. And the last thing I want to say regarding that is, one of the other hindrances, aside from, Ahl Sunnah, being plagued and infected with the nonsense, like Haddadiyah and other aspects of Hizbiyah and ignorance, aside from that, the Muslims, most of the Muslims in general from the Awam, because we got Muslims that they just, he's an army, he don't really know nothing, and we're not excluding him. We want him to be part of it. He doesn't have any organized confusion. He just going with the flow, nice brother, loves Islam, and he's trying to do his best. He don't even know that the hijab or the clothes his wife is wearing is not the proper hijab. He don't know nothing, but he loves the sunnah from a general sense. So if we teach him, he's going to accept it. A lot of those brothers, they're so far away from seeing the vision. If we would have just There's so
Oh,
many
yeah.
other things that we would have to discuss. He would have to go, you know what I mean? It's his level. He would have to
Right.
develop so much before he can even understand this conversation, right? Before he can even understand this conversation, it's like he's light years behind. So it's almost to the extent that he's not even an option. So I think, in my personal, humble, possibly insignificant opinion, it's going to take a small group of brothers, like the brothers on his phone and a few others, to make a conscious decision to figure out what we're going to do, right? Discuss it, come up with a practical entry-level approach, move together. Wherever we gonna move, we move. Ain't no look. I'm not sure about this, and I'm gonna move, and I'm gonna just stay in a little small place, but I'm not gonna give my place up yet because my wife might not like. Nope, your wife got to be on board. Our wives got to sit down, discuss, talk. Everybody got to be kids on the same page, and then we start small, and then we just we find an area. This area property value was like this. It has a little. I remember one time Najeeb mentioned a place in Alabama. I think that same place you're talking about. It had a everything was there. It had a area for school, businesses, everything. The property value was good. We come up with a place. We move there. We all collectively agree we're gonna move. We move, and then we start building. Now we can invite people because we're already there. We already took the initial steps. We're starting to gradually put our finances together, and that small project can become big one day. Because the only other option is to have a crazy fundraiser, put money together, and get people to start buying stuff up. And the brothers who got that kind of money, in my experience meeting those brothers, they think they made it already. What move where? I made it already. My daughter over here, she's a dentist, and my son over there, he's a doctor. My other son over there is his lawyer. What are you talking about? Develop. Your daughter don't wear hijab. Mind you, your son just married a girl who, is a Buddhist. But as far as you're concerned, you still made it. So I think, in my opinion, that's the only way we're gonna set off. So again, Barakallah, if you just wanted to clarify that, man. So,
I think when dealing with this particular subject, I think the very first initial step, and Allah knows best, will be to form some type of think tank.
right.
Some type of think tank that'll study this, and it maps out the needs. The think tank will when looking at these things, we'll have to examine first and foremost the needs of the community and for its survival, the essential needs for its survival, especially in the beginning stages, and then the localities that are most conducive for that. I think that if we're going to be serious about establishing some type of Islamic village, then the first thing that we would have to do is organize some type of think tank that's not a bunch of brothers getting in a room having discussions, but no, real research will have to be done. Real research,
absolutely, yeah,
concerning localities, the economies in those localities, and the potential to be able to do what is necessary in order for an Islamic village to, one, be established, and then two, grow.
right.
And Allah knows best.
If I can say, I think one of the biggest problems has been from the standpoint of leadership, right? Has been on behalf of the leaders of the community. And also another big problem has been from the standpoint of the community themselves and the lack of support. So of course I put myself as being part of the overall problem. I think as Muslims, especially as people upon the Sunnah, now we have to have more maturity. We have to have more maturity and we have to be able to look at the bigger picture. And if we look at the bigger picture and the bigger objective, and that is, establishing communities and establishing situations that will lend to Islamic sustainability for generations to come. When we look at that and see that as the big goal, you know what I mean? A lot of the things that keep us from sitting down with each other become real insignificant when we look at that. Because the reality of it is that a lot of the reasons that we have not sat down with each other are not even real reasons. It's just because of the shaitan has as the Prophet ﷺ told us, يعني الشيطان يعبده المصلين يعني يعبده المصلون ولكن التحريج بينهم, that the shaitan has given up hope that the people who pray will worship him, so he puts his energy in making division amongst them, right? And I know there are many brothers who have saw themselves on opposite sides, quote unquote, and so on and so forth, but then they sit down and they talk and they realize it was never really nothing. I was all, gassed up of thinking it was like this, and it wasn't even like that. And then, and vice versa. Brother said, well, yeah, I thought you felt like this about me, and that wasn't even the case. And subhanAllah, it's the shaitan. It's the shaitan. So I think, that has been a big hindrance on many of our parts. And like I said, I'll chalk it up to immaturity. And a lot of us, we were young. 10 years ago, we was a lot younger. 20 years ago, we was a whole lot younger, right? But I think that now many of us have aged and have gotten to the point that we can look back in hindsight and we can see the mistakes and the missteps that we have taken in our younger years, and also look back over the past 20 some odd years and see how many children we have lost to the streets, to see how many children we have lost to academia, because people, they look at the streets and they say, oh, we're losing our kids to the streets, they joining gangs, they doing this, they doing that, and that's true. A lot of kids are being lost to the streets, and that's a problem. But we're also losing kids to academia. Kids are going off to college. They're going off and they're getting good jobs, white collar jobs, and so on and so forth. But then they become agnostic because they have doubts in their religion because they never had a strong foundation. They're going off to college and they become an atheist. They're going off to college, and they do know the suicide rate amongst second generation Muslims is higher than that of the general population. That is an alarming statistic. You understand? But this is taking place. Why? Because we don't have these things set in place. We don't have what we need infrastructurally set in place that will lend to Islamic sustainability. So again, when we look back and we see all the problems and we see the situations that we're in and we see where we're heading and there's nowhere good, we realize that a lot of these little trivial issues that we may have with one another, they really don't stand up. Like Shahad Shimon, he mentioned, and if you ask about a person, he got a problem with his Aqidah? No. He got a problem with his Minhaj? No. He's got a problem with does he believe wrong in Qadr? No. Does he believe wrong in the Asma wa Sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? No. So what's the issue? The brothers upon the Sunnah, what's the issue? What's the real issue then? You understand? And because the reality is there is no real issue. So my point is that there has been the leaders have dropped the ball. So and I blame myself first and foremost. We dropped the ball, and that's the reality. And the way to move forward, after having realized the issue and identified the problem, the way to move forward is as Najeeb he mentioned, we need to form some type of we need to open up the lines of communication. Before that, we need to open up the lines of communication and communicate with one another, to reach out and to talk about one another. If anybody out there, and this is the reality, anybody anywhere in the world got an issue with me, contact me. Contact me at Abu Abdussalam on Twitter, Facebook, everywhere, Instagram. Contact me. Say, look, brother, this is the issue. And we can talk about it. We can talk about it. If I did something to wrong you, may Allah Ta'ala forgive me, and may you forgive me. Let's talk about it, right? And then likewise, if whoever I'm talking to, I got something with you, then I'm gonna tell you this one I'm not feeling about you. These are my observations I have with you. This is the gripes that I have with you, and then we can sit there and we can see if we can move forward. But we have to come to a point where we come together for the greater good. We come together for our children's children. That we come together to spread Islam. That we come together to spread the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ upon the understanding of the Salaf of this Ummah. Not on no funny business, not on no weirdo stuff, but we come together to spread the haqq, to spread that haqq that we all claiming to be upon, that we actually come together. And that starts by communicating. So anybody out there, you upon the Sunnah, you want to talk. Any Muslim out there, you want to talk, contact me and we'll talk and we can sit down. Anybody that has passion, anybody that wants to see the likes of these projects start to actually take root, contact me. We can talk about it and we can start strategizing and putting our heads together, pulling our resources together and moving forward. Because the point is that, and again, these conversations, they're just to highlight an issue. They're just to shed light upon a particular issue and a particular problem and to offer some aspects of a solution so that we can move forward. So if anything, Bidnillahi ta'ala, I pray to Allah ta'ala that this has touched the hearts of certain people and that has motivated them to want better for themselves, has motivated them to want better for their progenies, has motivated them to want better for the Muslims who are not going to be able to make hijrah, and for those Muslims who are not thinking about making hijrah, so that we can establish something that will help our grandchildren's 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 grandchildren. And anybody who's serious about doing that, I'm serious, contact me, and we can talk about it and we can start to move forward. And I believe the brothers on this panel, likewise, contact them, inshallah ta'ala. Maybe a person, they don't want to contact me, you don't like me, whatever. Okay, contact Najeeb, right? Contact Ismail. Contact us and let's sit down and let's talk and let's move forward.
And I'm gonna say something just for the listening audience, because I've been paying attention to some comments, some of the last comments. I myself have reached out to people.
Yeah.
I myself have reached out to people. What I have found is some people are reluctant to deal with me for whatever the reason. I can't change that. I don't know what people's hesitations are, but I reached out to some people, and one person I got a very weird response from. I'm gonna say it like that, and then no response after that when I followed up. And another person just basically egged me on. So I'm basically saying that I have tried to reach out to people, and there is a reluctancy with some brothers for whatever the reason may be. I'm not assuming anything about anyone, but what I do know is there's a reluctancy there. So the point that I'm making is, because I can see some people trying to say, well, why do they got to contact you? Why don't you take the initiative to go contact them? Well, I'm saying I have done that with certain people, and that's been the response. And so you can't make people get out of their feelings, whatever issues that they may have. It's me, myself personally, a lot of the brothers involved in Dawah, a lot of these brothers I don't know personally, and they don't know me personally. Unless they've heard something, it would have been better to verify. I can only speculate while people act standoffish. I can only speculate, but I know if I put the work in to try to do something, and what's being given back to me is hesitation, is distancing, or there's a dealing with me like with a long handled spoon and thus forth and so on. Then what else can I do? What else can I do? That's all I could basically say. Now, I'm not saying that to say I've reached out to everybody involved in Dawah, so I don't want people to get that impression as well. But there has been people that I've reached out to, and that's been the response. And there's been people that I've reached out to, and the response hasn't been that. The responses have been positive, But for a lot of these situations, I'm gonna tell you something. A lot of it is going to take our elders to get involved.
Yeah.
Some of these things are going to take our elders to get involved, and Allah knows best.
No.
I mean, definitely, man. I think when we look at brotherhood on a larger scale, and, Islam on a larger scale, absolutely, man. I agree with you 150%. I think that when it does go back to and keeping with the theme, we need an Islamic village. I like what you said 100% when you said it before, and I liked it then, that, we don't have to depend on the leadership to go ahead and, come together collectively and work towards a common goal. You know what I mean? We're not talking about,
right, of
course, going up the block and doing something that traditionally is the responsibility of the masjid, and now we're going to do our own thing. All sisters want to get married. Okay, we're going to open up a Wali organization where a bunch of brothers come together and start marrying off sisters to brothers No, I don't mean anything like that. Of course, we're talking about projects that, don't that people just assume are the responsibility of the imams or the du'at or whoever it is, or the administration. And in all actuality, you don't have to have an imam or an administration to put together some food to feed the fuqara, or to put together some money to take care of the divorced sisters that need their rent subsidized, or to, put together a fund to help send children to learn the Quran or go to Islamic school, or students of knowledge to go study. You don't have to have the masjid to do that. That's Google Brothers, organized, structured, and they go ahead and do it, right? So when it comes to, where I want to live, where Najeeb wants to live, where Yusuf wants to live, where Khalil wants to live, where Sadiq wants to live, or where anybody else who may be listening wants to live, and their goals as Muslims and as of their household, that's an independent entity. You know what I mean? We can, I'm with y'all 100% reaching out, opening up the invitation for brothers or sisters who may have had problems with us or down or something we said, and people may look at us a particular way or feel a particular way about us. Some people may disagree with us because, if a sheikh gives a fatwa or a refutation, we ask for dalil, they got a problem with it. I mean, that's your problem. If you got a problem with us asking for dalil, that's not our issue. You have to go learn that part of your religion. But I'm just saying, the bottom line is there are people that may have a problem with us because we're not kissing nobody's ring, because we're not just rolling over and going with the flow, or, we whatever it is people are still doing nowadays. There are people, and there's some people that I'm not going to sound arrogant, maybe we have done something either as a group or individually that was incorrect or rubbed somebody the wrong way. We need to be checked. And alhamdulillah, that door is open, right? And may Allah reward you, brothers, for opening up that invitation. And may Allah reward you, brothers, those of you that have actually reached out to brothers to try to rectify whatever needs to be rectified. But I think that in keeping with the theme, right now, we need to sit down. And again, like Abu Abdul Salam said, we're not necessarily talking about this discussion today. Is not about, well, this is what we're going to do. We got the plan. Let's start implementing it tomorrow. No. It's more to open up the door, like Najeeb said, laying the foundation down for a think tank, so we can eventually, have a discussion that leads to a discussion that leads to a discussion that leads to, ideas, solutions, and ideas and practical application. So within that, I honestly believe that, just picture this. You got 5 brothers, right? 5 brothers. Each one of those brothers calls, one brother. And each one of those brothers called one brother. And it goes on to get about maybe 15, 20 people, 25 people. Out of that 25 people, you get 15 brothers who actually are feeling. And again, you yourself as an individual, you sit back and you think about the brothers who maybe you've had a conversation with them about this, or maybe you may say to yourself, "Our brother so-and-so, both his parents are in such and such, he's not leaving them, so he may not fit what we're trying to do right now, maybe down the line. This brother over here, he's in his first year of college, and he already told you he's going here and he has plans on going to that medical school. Okay, he's not really somebody you may want to choose. But then you got brother over here who's in the real estate. You can do real estate anywhere you want to go. He may be a brother who that does real estate. He may be a money guy, and he's not necessarily attached to where he is. Okay, he's a candidate. This brother over here, he may have the kind of job that's transferable. You know what I mean? And he's always complaining about, where he is and how he doesn't have this, and he's worried about his kids. He may be a candidate. So you sit down, you come up with a list of brothers who you actually think, may be interested in coming together to developing a small village where Muslims can go live in Islamic peace and tranquility, and start to solidify something holistic and good for their offspring, inshallah. So everybody comes up with one person. Again, we aim high. We get 15 people that are serious. If me and Sadiq have 13 more people with us right now who had that same mind frame, right? It would be crazy. Just 15 right now. It would be insane. That 15 would feel like the whole town. Just 13 more brothers with their families on the same page. That's what I'm saying. Things like Aqeedah, Manhaj, when you start to fine tune the people, it's like, okay, you send it for play, no problem. If your sheikh says, and I hate to keep using it, but this is one of the most divisive things we got going on. because they're awam who claim Salafiyya, but they actually think that the nonsense, and that's why when Najeeb said has its place, it has its place, and it has to be something that's understood when we start talking about, you know, developing and putting together a team of people, like-minded people. This is one of those things that divide us. We have to make sure that the brothers who are working with us, they don't got none of that nonsense with them, right? Because if you got 15 brothers who not on none of that nonsense, 15 brothers that's willing to work, they don't have anything that's going to hold them back from developing and growing, and they're not afraid to move from one state to the next. None of that. 15 brothers all committed. Again, nobody's expecting to come here that it's going to be easy, that everything's going to be laid out. No, they understand the long-term goal. And we sit down, we have a conference, we prepare some food, and the people come. And they see these 15 brothers and their families. And we sit down with them and discuss what we're trying to do. It'll be over after that, inshallah. It'll be over after that. As long as that core group sticks to, their principles, and nobody wavers, and everybody, is in it for the team. We're not thinking about that. I remember one time, it was a brother, right? Me and a brother I was talking to, and I've had this conversation with more than one brother, but it was another brother I was talking to one time, and his family was small, right? He either had no children or one small baby or something like that. And we had a conversation. We had a conversation a couple of times about community development and family and so on and so forth, and sticking together. And I actually said, from an African-American standpoint, one of the things that we suffer from is we don't have tribes, and we don't have, those kind of Muslim families that, support us in anything that we're doing. I can't sit my tribe down and say, this is what we're going to do. And all 60 members, we all work together to try to do this. I can't sit my tribe down and say, well, my son needs a wife. And all 60 members reach out to the greater aspects of the tribe until eventually my son, we find a girl who's been vetted, who everybody knows. So we don't have that. So it's like everybody just kind of wandering around in this, isolated nomadic state as individuals, right? And I remember saying to him, like, man, it's crazy, because not being nationalistic, but we really do need to kind of prioritize, our people, not in the nationalistic sense, but just in the sense that, okay, this is a damaged group of people. We got a whole masjid full of people that have very similar narratives. We have to come up with some kind of plan to help repair that and repair the things that are damaged about them. And one of the things that are damaged, one of the reasons why we are the last to get things like this together is because of the disenfranchisement and the destruction and the breakdown of our families and our tribes and our, our nation. So we don't have that. So basically what we have to do is our tribalism, for lack of better expression, has to be based on, and this is the best and most beautiful thing to base it on, our affiliation with one another based off our aqidah and manhaj. So I was having this conversation with this brother, like, man, we ain't gonna come together necessarily on blood or, the food we eat and our ethnicity and all of that kind of stuff, like other people are born into, and nor should we try to come together on that at this point in our lives. But we have to kind of develop a tribal family, domestic dependence on one another, right? Based off our aqidah and manhaj. And we were going in this conversation, but I could see that it got to a point where it was like, okay, well, if it ever came down to it, where we will be responsible for one another, and we would be willing to make financial sacrifices even for one another, it did match up, because my family size and my bills and my finances and the things I had going on at the time, forget about now, but back at that time, mashallah, far outweighed his. You know what I'm trying to say? So if I come together and I tell a brother, okay, we need to do this, we need schools, we need that, and he don't got no kids, his passion for, for a strong academic atmosphere for children, he may not be able to see that goal. When we come together and I say, man, I got to figure out who my daughter's going to marry, who my son's going to marry. You know what I mean? They're at that age, I got to figure something out. This guy's son is walking around taking baby steps, falling down with a pant on. So his mind, he may or may not be able to fully comprehend that. So his passion may not be in the same place. That's another thing that comes in between us and establishing something like that, because you have brothers who their lifestyles, their life experience, things that are important to them right now, they don't even match up. Some of these young boys, all they thinking about is going overseas. I want to study. I want to blah, 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 blah. They get over there, they're posting their classes, they're charging. Oh, we having this discount. We teaching, Al Bayquniya, and it's a sale on this weekend, 50% off. Because you think that we have the same mind frame as that young boy? Absolutely not. He's trying to sell Bayquniya online. You know what I mean? Like that's where his financial aspirations are right now in his life. We're thinking about how we can have, 5 midwives and 3 doulas and, birthing centers for our women, or, a woman to come in, lactationist, to come in, understand lactationist, being a lactationist from an Islamic perspective and from a medical perspective, putting those two sciences together to show our women the importance of breastfeeding and how to breastfeed. And he's somewhere thinking about how he can sell Bayquniya online because, these couple of $100 a month will suffice him. It's very difficult. My point is that it's very, very difficult for us to come together with like-minded people, right, in today's climate, today's atmosphere, and think we're going to come up. It's very difficult for us to find like-minded people in today's atmosphere, in today's climate, that are on the same wavelengths, right, mentally, and right now, where they are in their lives, can either complement their understanding as it relates to what their brother's going through, even if they're not going through it themselves. The vicarious experience that they're having right now allows them to see the importance. Like, one day I'm gonna be in that situation where my son is gonna have to get married and we don't got nowhere to find him a wife because we don't got no community. Or one day I'm gonna be in that situation where my wife is gonna need, someone to help her have a baby the natural, healthy Muslim way. And we're gonna have, she's gonna need to be able to go next door to her sister's house. She's gonna have a situation where a baby doesn't want to drink the breast milk, and she's gonna be able, she needs to be able to knock on a neighbor's door, and this woman got 5, 10, 15 kids, and she can walk her through the process. All of these things, we have to have people who they're able to conceptualize things like this. We can get 15 families who thinking like that. Wallahi, Ikhwan, I think that's gonna be it. And we stick, and those 15 elders or founding fathers and founding families for that community stick to their principles, I think we'll be fine. And I think that the brothers with their haddadiyah and their nonsense, and the other brothers with their ikhwaniyah or their racism, or the other brothers with their hubb al-dunya wa karahiyat al-maut, and whatever other foolishness they have, none of that stuff is going to affect us anymore, because we will only attract like-minded people. Because the people who are, I don't want to say in control, but the people who are constantly replenishing the tone that they set when they built that community are continuously pushing that narrative and continuously pushing those ideas out there. So anybody who comes around, they're going to come around, and they're not going to have any choice except to gradually assimilate to the good that those brothers are trying to establish. But I think that's what we need to do. I think we need to start small, right? Get to know each other, get to love each other more, right? And then later on, we can handle, the other people coming along, man. But again, so reaching out, I agree with y'all, but I think that that's more of a general goal, us just trying to unite the hearts. You know what I mean? I think right now we need to focus on those brothers that we do have a good relationship with, and who are like-minded and are mature enough to understand where we're trying to go, and just, put that think tank together, take those suggestions and those ideas, make that qiyam al-layl, and just build, man.
Yeah. And also, one last thing I want to point out to the brothers and the sisters and all those who may be tuning in is that I don't want anyone to walk away from this conversation with the impression that we're talking about doing things that we ourselves are not in the process of already doing. This is not a situation that we're just talking, but we haven't put forth any effort in doing these things. Alhamdulillah, all of the brothers involved have been involved in the dawah for quite some time. and have been instrumental in communities. For example, and this is not to throw dirt in anyone's face, but just so that it is known, our brother Najeeb, may Allah Ta'ala reward him. He has a nonprofit, Talha Islamic Ministries. And one of the purpose of this nonprofit is to establish Muslim communities throughout America, and on every single level and things of this nature, and working towards putting these things in play. And this is something that has that's already there, is already established. Work has already been put forth, so on and so forth. So brothers are working. Alhamdulillah, brother Ismail and myself, as we talk about, brothers coming together, sitting down, having conversations, right? My brother, me and him from the same town. We both from Paterson, New Jersey, right? And we always had love for each other. The shaitan came between us at one period of time by way of some evil individuals who pitted us against each other, right? But you know what?
Let me say, for the record, even when that happened, I was on the sideline, but I didn't know that was you. I thought it was a whole different brother. I didn't even know that I thought it was a whole entirely different brother that I didn't know. When I saw him, I thought it was a whole different brother with the same name.
No worries. I said, we always had love for each other. But alhamdulillah, Allah Ta'ala blessed us to be mature enough. I don't know if you remember. Remember we sat down in that Moroccan restaurant. We had some nice food, some nice Turkish coffee. You know what I mean? And we had a long man-to-man conversation. We were able to dissect and everything, and look at that situation and realize that there was never really nothing. We both were always on the same thing, same aqidah, same manhaj. Listen to the same mashaykh, read the same books. You know what I mean? So on and so forth. And it was nothing but really love that was there. And the shaitan just pitted us against each other by way of these individuals who had evil agendas and things of this nature. But with that, alhamdulillah, you know what I mean? I think that conversation, I would say, brought us together even stronger than ever before. So now you have brother Ismail and myself, both from Paterson, New Jersey, find ourselves way down here, Central Florida, in Apopka, Florida, of all places, a place that growing up I never knew even existed, right? Even up until a couple years ago, I didn't even know Apopka, Florida. Like I didn't even know that was a thing, that was even a place, But alhamdulillah, and we were able to come together with the community here and to help them in their development, and to help in the progress and things that they have accomplished. And alhamdulillah, if everyone have seen the video on Pure Islam that our brother Najeeb put together, may Allah Ta'ala reward him, as that was his idea actually, that they can get a good idea of what's going on in the Apopka. Now to date, alhamdulillah, we own the masjid, we own the land that's around it, the house that's next to it, the land behind it, alhamdulillah. I was told to date, the community came together with about close to $500,000 so far, with a whole lot more that has to be put in so that we can, fulfill and finish, these first few stages of the project. The point is that I don't want anyone to think that we just talking about it, but we're not doing it. No, we're in the process ourselves of doing it. We're in the process of reaching out to people. We're in the process of building the unity. We're in the process of growing the network and things of this nature. And I really want to highlight that so that anyone don't think that we just sitting there talking, but we're not doing. No, we're doing. One of the main purposes of this is to inspire others to who also are like-minded to come and help, or to start projects like this in your area, and then contact us still so that we can help each other. We can work with each other, even if that's sharing of ideas, sharing of, some things that we have done that help works for us, sharing that with you. Perhaps that can help work for you. Maybe some things you were doing we didn't know about. Share that information with us so that we can help and grow forward. Another thing that Our brother Najeeb, he has put together a very excellent bylaws for a masjid, right? Generic bylaws for a masjid, that any masjid that they're looking to establish themselves can take these bylaws, take this framework, and then it's plug and play, as they say, right? And he spent a long time putting this together and things that would be, very beneficial for the masajid and things of this nature, so that we can build this infrastructure. Brothers are busy at work. We're having this conversation publicly. These are conversations that we've been having privately for years, but we're having it publicly now because we want to inspire others. We want to inspire others to also work hard in their respective communities. If any of the brothers want to move to our community, ahlan wa sahlan. Brothers say, I don't want to move to Florida. I live all the way over here, whatever. Okay, then migrate to the community that's nearest to you, like our brothers up there with Abu Yusuf Khalifa in Queens, New York. Migrate there. Help them establish it, as they, for years, have been working hard and have been establishing things. The Islamic presence there in Left Rack City and there in Corona, Queens, and so on and so forth, doing a lot of good work. And the brothers been going all around New York and teaching. And Ismail's old masjid at Masjid al-Quran wa Sunnah, and that part of Queens as well. So the brothers have been working. The brothers are doing stuff. The point is that if you want to come to where one of us are at, ahlan wa sahlan, come help us. If you don't want to come here because of your situation, no problem. But get to work where you are. Get to work where you are to try to establish these things. Because the reality of it is that everyone is not going to help, or everyone is not going to be able to move to one place. We know that. We're going to be in every state. We're going to be, all scattered out throughout America. But at least if we can have strong pockets, strong communities. So if I touch down in Georgia, then I got a community I can stop in, right? If I touch down in Ohio, it's a community I can stop in. In Kansas is a community I can stop in. Anywhere in America I touch down, there's a community that I can stop in, where we could really establish an infrastructure to give our great grandchildren a fighting chance. It is incumbent that we get together and we get serious to try to establish these things. It is incumbent that the leadership get their act together. It is incumbent that it's not just the leaders, though, because people will say, oh, the leaders. And then they sit back in their hands like, yeah, when the leaders get it straight, we'll be straight. No, you too have your role to play. And if that is a supporting role, if that is a role as far as resources, because you can, you have the resource that you can help, or it could be the sweat equity. If you have the skills, if you have just the strength to come together and to help establish something, You got brothers here up on the Sunnah in Florida, in Claremont, who are building a masjid. And when I say building a masjid, I mean that the brothers themselves are actually the construction crew. They are literally building the masjid. Very few outside help. Most of the help comes from the people who go to the masjid, the brothers. They learned all kind of construction skills and things of this nature, and they are building literally a masjid. You have brothers that have sweat equity, and that's important. We need men. That's going to strive to push Allah Ta'ala's deen and to spread Allah's deen all throughout these states. We need men. And as one person once said, it's time for the men to look to spread the dawah and to carry the dawah, and people have to stop looking to be carried by the dawah. So I just want to put that out there so that it is known what we're trying to do, where we are in what stage that we are at, and so on and so forth, so that it's known that we're not just talking, but we're actively working with Allah alhamd, and we're trying to go to the next level, the next step. But as anyone knows, we cannot do it by ourselves. It's impossible for us to do it by ourselves. We need the help of the Muslims. We need the help of the general community of Muslims, and in particular, we need the help of Ahlul Sunnah to come together to put forth the work. This is what we need. We don't need people to talk about it. We need people who's going to come together to put forth the work. And again, for those brothers who I haven't gotten a chance to sit down and have a talk with yet, listen, contact me. Inshallah ta'ala, yani brothers know that we're striving to broaden the sphere and the network. So yani look to hear from us. But hey, don't wait for me. I might be slow in getting around to you. Contact me, right? And so on and so forth. I'm open. It's an open door. Anybody want to contact me, contact me. You got a complaint, hit me with your complaint. You don't like me for whatever reason, contact me and tell me that. Contact me and let me know. And may Allah Ta'ala make me better. And may Allah Ta'ala make us all better. But let us be adults, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And we don't have time for silly, frivolous excuses. These hindrances like this, we can easily knock them down, and let's move forward. No.
I'm gonna say, because man, we've been broadcasting for a while now, so it's time to close out. I want to end this particular dialogue, but I want to say this, because this has been on my mind. First and foremost, I want to apologize to my brother Ismail and the caller Yusuf ibn Moyer. If Yusuf, if you're still listening, I want to apologize to both you brothers for the beating around the bush comment. I think it was inappropriate. I've seen how it was reacted to, and I believe that if brothers weren't offended, it could still have been offensive. And so I apologize to my brothers in that regard, and I hope that you guys accept my apology and pardon me for my shortcomings in that regard. So I think it's very important for me to say that. If Yusuf, if you're listening, I hope that you pardon me for that statement, especially if you were offended, and I definitely didn't intend to offend anybody. Closing out, I would say to the brothers and sisters that are listening to once again subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you can stay updated on the things that's being done on this channel. Like the video as well. We want to make sure things of this nature spread. And although we only touched on a few things concerning the subject matter, because this is yet another subject matter that'll take many different settings, I still believe that the overall discussion was good. And it's like our brother Siddiq said, it may be that we may spark a person's interest and seeing and attempted to achieve these things that are being talked about. And it could be that this particular session of heavyweight dialogue is the motivating factor that causes a person to accomplish that by the permission of Allah. And if that is the case, then the dialogue was successful. Overall, the dialogue was successful. So I'm going to leave it at that, because we've been talking for quite some time now, and it's 10:41, almost 11 o'clock. I feel my stomach growling a little bit. I don't know about the brothers. But I don't like to eat too late, so with that, we're going to end it there. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. To the listening audience, I say assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi